name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe that they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today, we have Michael Paul Gonzalez. He is the author and playwright of Carry Me Home, Stories of Heartbreak, Miss Massacre's Guide to Murder and Vengeance, and the soon to be published Beneath the Salton Sea, coming out from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing on November 16th. And you can buy that at perpetualpublishing.com. And also a fellow podcaster of a podcast called Larkspur Underground, which is or was a serialized podcast investigating the case of Jane Doe, the lone survivor found in an underground bunker turned murder factory. So I want to talk about that podcast, but first, Michael, would you tell me a little bit about your newest book that's coming out next month?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. So Beneath the Salton Sea is a short novel told in three parts about two women. They're married. They're capturing some footage out by the Salton Sea. Which, if you're familiar with the area, or I should say, if you're not familiar with the area, it's this big salt lake in the desert in California that is just slowly rotting away and trying to survive and being reclaimed by artists and all this other. It's a crazy area. I highly recommend googling it. So they're out recording footage by this place called Salvation Mountain by the Sea, which is a giant art installation. And someone tells them about a rumor about a crack in the sky above the Salton Sea, and they decide to go out and investigate it because they start to notice these weird things happening related to it. And of course, weird things start to happen. They get caught up in a situation that's, bigger than either of them can really handle. It's kind of a cosmic horror, technological horror thing. And that's just the first part of the novel. And then the other two parts kind of deal with how the effects of that horror kind of ripple through their family, and kind of keep echoing throughout time. So it's kind of hard to describe, but it's kind of cosmic horror, technological horror, but generally spooky.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, a friend of the podcast, Max Booth III, was kind enough to give me an advanced reader's copy of it. So I was able to read the first story, and because I know you said it's like divided into three parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to read that first story, and it is amazing. It was a lot of fun to read. And generally, I was telling Max, I'm not a fan of cosmic horror in general, just because honestly, I'm not smart enough to kind of go along with a lot of those. Like my brain just starts to wander as soon as I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand what's happening. But in this one, in your story, you kept it grounded by also like it was a lot of like gore and horror in it as well, which I really liked. You did a great job in that, and actually, I had some quotes from your book that I was reading that I kind of wanted to read to you and kind of ask you about those, if that'd be okay with
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
So the two quotes. The first quote I love. It says, "There are little pockets where life clings on: birds, reptiles, people. It's an ecosystem of living things that rely on other living things too stubborn to leave. Life forcing itself on death, or maybe the other way around." That last sentence, life forcing itself on death, or maybe the other way around, is such an interesting concept, and I've never seen it put that way. Where, like, can you tell me a little bit about? Maybe you don't remember writing that specific sentence, but do you have anything about that specific sentence you remember writing?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's almost where the everything started for me. The first time I went to the Salton Sea was in 2009-ish, 2010, somewhere around there, because we'd kind of heard about it. People are like, "Oh, you should check this place out," and we all we knew was that it was an area that used to be a resort town. Like, it was a big salt lake, had boating community, fishing, wildlife. People would go get away for the weekend, and that things had been happening there. There was a flood. That's about the extent we heard of it, and that some of the coastal communities got damaged by the flood. And so we went out there, and the first place we saw was this. It's called the North Shore Yacht Club, which makes it sound like it's going to be this big fancy building. And it was boarded up and like graffiti all over the place. Just falling apart, spooky, which is what we love to explore, spooky stuff. So Um, and then we were walking along the beach there, and from far away we're like, oh well, it's a nice beach, it's got these clean white sands everywhere. And the closer you get, you realize it's like millions and millions of little tiny fish bones and bird bones. Like the whole beach, it's not sand, it's just bones of dead animals. And then further down the road, there's this community, Bombay Beach, which features in the book as well. Still there. I mean, it's a trailer community. People live there. There's some nicer trailers, some regular houses, that kind of thing. Um, but the closer you get to the sea, you can see that there's abandoned buildings, burned out. Obviously, like meth heads, a lot of people using drugs, homeless people kind of pass through. So there's a lot of garbage strewn about. So you got this mix of like these kind of manicured little trailer homes, and then these just blasted out, burned out relics. And it's a community. I mean, people live there. There's bars, there's restaurants. They're spread out. It's the desert, so people usually kind of go out there to be alone. And that's sort of where I got that where that concept from is. You would think that as this area just kind of slides into decay, people would just give up and move away. But it's like they're hanging in there, they're persevering, and and then the sea itself is, which I should have mentioned. You can, when you're about 80 miles, at 80 miles, I would say, away from the sea, you can kind of start to smell it if the wind is blowing the right way, because it's just salt and dead fish. And on certain days, some days it's clean. I've been there when it was not so bad, and I've been there when it's like pretty stinky. But yeah, I mean, these communities are hanging on, and I think there's something pretty beautiful about that concept.
Yeah, and so the way you're describing it now is exactly how it's described in your book, and I didn't realize that this was a real place up until you said so. So while you were describing it, you were transporting me back into this what I thought was like a fictional
Yeah.
world. And so that was like that was a real weird sense that was happening right there. But that's great. I didn't realize it was a real place. You did a great job in describing and building that world.
Yeah, and I should mention too, like the first story in the book was previously published in or a version of it. This is a slightly edited version. Max had a collection called Lost Signals, which he just wanted horror stories based on radio signals or broadcast signals. So that's sort of where this started. So that was the first time we went out there, and I should say, like, this, on a subsequent visit, that we're like, oh, let's go see that cool decrepit North Shore Yacht Club again. And all of a sudden, it was, this is a couple of years had passed, and it was this pristine museum and visitor center. All of a sudden, like, you wouldn't even recognize the building. And so that's sort of what inspired me to keep moving with the book. And like, the area was changing, but that tragedy that was kind of set in the time of my first visit, like, now the area is, it was like stepping into a different world almost. So yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I highly recommend anyone that if you're in Southern California. It sounds weird to say, go visit this abandoned series of ghost towns by a stinky sea, but it's worth the trip. Yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other quote that has it's a little bit shorter. It says, "Could you identify a loved one by their whisper?" And this one affected me in a way because I've never thought of that. It kind of got me thinking like of what do they call it, like pillow talk when you're in the bed with
Hmm.
your significant other and you're going to sleep or whatever the case may be. You guys are just kind of whispering. Like I took it quite literally. Would I be able to identify my spouse by her whisper? But it was also kind of creepy because like, what if I couldn't and somebody was in the room with me whispering and I thought it was her and it wasn't? Like what
Yeah.
what was the what prompted you or what was the thought behind this sentence?
Yeah. So that one is, it's kind of cool that you pick up on that. Because you're hitting on it there at the end is not just an actual whisper, but like, but the story kind of continues on from the first, as this incident kind of echoes through time. It's bouncing from these two women to the woman's sister to the woman's mother, and so the mom later on in the book is hearing things, and it's a voice, but it's not. Obviously, if I was talking like this, I'm sure my wife would be like, "Oh yeah, that's my husband." But if it was a whisper, that was saying things that I would say, but would you know it was me if there were all these other extenuating circumstances that previously in the book that are like, am I going crazy? Is reality falling apart? Here's this voice that's saying things that my loved one would say, um, but is it them? Could you identify it? And more, almost more expanding on that in the book are like small little incidents. So not just like a vocal whisper, but a whisper of like a memory. Like you see something happens, you could see for some people um a swing set, and some people would be like, oh, that's a swing set, and some people would look at it and you'd think like, oh, I had one of those when I was a kid, and it just kind of just blossoms into these huge memories of important things or painful things or happy things that happened in your life. So that's kind of the stuff that the book starts to touch on later with horror, is just like these tiny fragments of memory and personality, I guess, that hit people. And is that someone talking to you from from the past, from the future? Is it just your brain remembering things? So yeah.
I love that idea, that the concept of a loved one being more than just their voice, it being like you said, something that you connect to them, some item, some memory, and it's not a whisper that you would hear auditorily, but it's a whisper of a memory in your mind that, like you say, blossom. That Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. I love that.
Yeah.
I finished that first third of it, or that first story, and then afterwards there was some journal entries. What prompted you to go that route of writing these journal entries instead of just like a straight narrative narrative story?
Yeah, so one of the things, going back to Bombay Beach, there's a trailer. Actually, I think it's a house that's still standing there that features heavily in the book, but it's a real building. And the last time we just went there recently because I'm putting together some footage for the book trailer, and it used to have this rickety set of wooden stairs that went up, to a second floor. The first time we went there, we were brave enough to go up the stairs and peek out. At this point, it's kind of rotted away to, there's like two steps left, but you can see the frames of the stairs. But in that building, it's two rooms, and they were just smeared with graffiti and posters and paste ups, all this art everywhere. But in between a lot of the art, we started to see um, it looked like the same person's handwriting. So we'd see like in one corner just something that said "Sorry, Dad," and like on another wall was just like almost made it, and just like, almost like this weird like disjointed story that was carrying throughout the room. So um, the book starts to get into the person who was there, who doesn't really feature in the story, but he was there at the incident that starts this whole cosmic horror thing that opens the crack in the sky. So you get a bit of his journals as that madness is leaking into his head. Um, the crack, I guess you could say, kind of opens in a way that you step outside of time, so that you're seeing like every possibility of what could be, what is, what was, what could have been. And his journals, that madness that would run through your head, is he's kind of like reaching out to his wife, that he knew, but also possibly her in the future, but also possibly her in the past. So it's not so much part of the narrative as just kind of this scrambled, someone who someone who's in the wash of this big, cosmic existential horror.
Okay. So, Michael, what is your history with horror, or be it horror movies, horror comics, that sort of thing? Did you love it growing up? Did you hate it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I hated horror movies when I was a kid. I was a latchkey kid, so we spent a lot of time, kind of at home alone while the parents were working, under strict orders, stay at home till we're home, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the world was kind of spooky to begin with. I grew up in southeast Wyoming, so small town, wind howling at night, that kind of thing. So I was never one to try to amplify that with horror. So people would talk about, oh, Freddy, Jason, and I'd be like, nah, I don't need any blood and gore in my life. But like looking back on my childhood, I realized there's a different kind of horror that I really enjoyed as a kid. When you look at like Big Trouble in Little China has horror elements to it, Little Shop of Horrors, even just movies like that where it's like I kind of enjoyed the spookiness of it, But it wasn't really until like my first horror movie that I saw in theaters. I don't even know if people remember. It was called Monkey Shines, which is about a guy who ends up in a wheelchair and he has like a helper monkey who turns psychotic on him.
Yeah, it's a George Romero
I
movie, I
Yeah, I think
believe.
so. And I remember because like I was 15, I snuck in with my older brother and his friend. And in my head, I'm like, it was like this rite of passage, like, oh, scary movie. This is going to be so intense. And not to ruin this movie, but like the end of the movie, this guy literally, because he's bound to a wheelchair, has to grab the monkey with his teeth and shake it around like a dog to kill it. And I just started laughing, and I was like, wait a minute, this is fun. Horror is fun, And that kind of opened some doors for me to kind of relax, and start looking at other things like Critters, Ghoulies, Chud. It's all the typical '80s schlock. I'm a kid of the '80s, so
Yeah, like
um, yeah,
the '80s little monster movies.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. And then how about horror authors? Did you have anybody that you loved reading when you were growing up or anything like that?
Um, yeah, this little known author named Stephen King, obviously.
Yeah.
That I think
He's the
my brother.
backbone of horror nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. My brother used to just, he would like buy his novels like and just eat them up. And of course, me, I'm like horror. No, I won't touch it. And then he brought home one day that had this dragon on the cover. Eyes of the Dragon. I'm like, well, I'll give this a shot. And it just kind of sucked me in, and I read that. But I didn't like. I haven't until recently really been a big reader of horror. I
Okay.
don't know why. Like, I like it. I like it in the short form. And of course, anytime I have to think of like stories to name it, my mind goes blank. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, go
Do
ahead.
you do you consider yourself a horror writer, or is it just a genre that you dabble in and you like to write other genres as well?
Yeah, I think I like to write any genre. I mean, I'm a my degree's in playwriting. So any form, novel, stage play, screenplay, whatever. But I do like to play around with different genres. I have found it's horror is just such a fun place to explore, like psychological, and it's sort of like having fantasy, um, but kind of grounding it in the real world. So you try. I guess I don't know how to put this. Like I think that horror comes from something that feels like it could happen to you. I think you know what I mean. So it's fun to explore how close you can get to uh, making people feel something, through your words. Yeah,
Okay.
just it's hard to put into words, but yeah, I do I like exploring those sides of humanity, I guess you could say.
Okay. So that's cool because as we were talking, I was kind of getting kind of feel for why you picked the movie that you picked, and I'm not sure if you picked it for these reasons. But first, let's go ahead and confess your sin, your horror sin of never having watched Evil Dead. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. It's unbelievable. I've seen Army of Darkness dozens of times, and I had never seen the original Evil Dead.
Yeah, it's funny because I came about it the same way. I saw Army of Darkness first before I saw Evil Dead or Evil Dead Two.
Hmm.
So, and the way they structured the story, you could do that. You don't need to know what happened in Evil Dead One or Two to be like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah,
But they sprinkled enough information to make you kind of want to, find those movies.
yeah, yeah. And I'm actually I don't think I've seen Evil Dead 2 either, so I need to go back and watch that because I've read Bruce Campbell's autobiography, and how he talks about Evil Dead 2 is just essentially a better budget remake of Evil Dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they take a second swing at it, so I want to check that out.
Well, I will say that Evil Dead is the original. The Evil Dead is more of a straight up horror
Hmm.
movie, whereas Evil Dead Two is, they did have a bigger budget. They kind of retell it, but they do lean in more on the horror. I'm sorry, they do lean in more on the comedy, and
Hmm.
kind of that's where Bruce Campbell becomes the Bruce Campbell we know. and
Yeah.
love. So yeah, I definitely recommend that one as well. But
Yeah.
in talking specifically about Evil Dead, why do you think this particular movie never made it off your list and always kind of stayed at the top of your to watch list?
I mean, I feel like it's one of those that kind of gets tossed around as early horror classics. Obviously, Sam Raimi being the prolific director that he is now. It's so funny when you think of Sam Raimi, Peter Jackson, all these directors that we think of with these big franchise Oscar movie kind of things, and they all get their start in these like gritty, gory, shoestring budget, seedier pants horror films.
Yeah, same with Guillermo del Toro.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's fun to yeah. I mean, I think what I like the character Ash. So I mean, he's just such a simultaneously like a fun, cool guy and such a dick at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things where it's like the TV series started, and I was every time it would pop back into the cultural zeitgeist, I'd be like, I should probably watch Evil Dead, and then I never did, and now this was the perfect opportunity. So I thank you for making me go through with it.
Yeah, no problem. So what I was mentioning earlier, when we were talking about your book and we were talking about some of the themes and stuff, uh, what I read, at least, I don't know if it continues throughout the rest of the book, but the first story that I read, there was some gore in it, some parts that were pretty horrific that you described excellently. It made me like cringe, like in a good way, in my
Yeah,
seat while I was reading it, and that kind of reminds me of a lot of the gore that was happening in Evil Dead. A
yeah.
lot of the gore was happening in Evil Dead, and the other thing was the quote, "Could you identify a loved one by their whisper?" In Evil Dead, there is a part where someone is talking,
Hmm.
and you think you know who it is, but in fact, it isn't them. But Ash isn't able to immediately identify that it isn't that person. So, and we'll get there, when we talk about it. But I just thought that was
Yeah,
interesting, and
yeah,
also the other part was the journal entries that you have in
yeah,
this story.
yeah. Wow,
There's
parallels.
journal
Yeah,
entries in Evil Dead as well, so there's a lot
yeah,
of parallels here. So
yeah.
I know you're a genius, and that's why you picked this movie.
And the recording equipment that actually that plays into the latter half of my book as well. I didn't. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
look
That's
at
cool. So yeah,
that.
we're hitting themes here for you.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about The Evil Dead from 1981, written and directed by Sam Raimi, starring Bruce Campbell as Ashley Williams, Ellen Sandweiss as Cheryl Williams, Richard Demencore as Scott, Betsy Baker as Linda, Teresa Tilly as Shelley, and if you've been on their IMDb page, the IMDb page for The Evil Dead, there's about a dozen fake Shemps, including Ted and Ivan Raimi. Now, are you familiar with what fake Shemps are?
um. Oh gosh, it was in his. I know it's like a term they use.
Yeah, I
I
have
don't
it
remember
here.
it from his autobiography. Yeah, go ahead.
Michael, you're in luck because I have it here just for you. So this was taken from IMDb. I got a lot of information from there. I also got information from a really cool website called Deadites.net and also from Wikipedia. So, a fake Shemp, or simply Shemp, is the term for someone who appears in a film under heavy makeup, filmed from the back, or perhaps only showing an arm or a foot. Although use of the term is limited, it is frequently used in connection with Sam Raimi's movies. The term refers to the comedy trio The Three Stooges. In 1955, Stooge Shemp Howard died of a sudden heart attack. At the time, the Stooges still had four shorts left to deliver by the terms of the trio's annual contract with Columbia Pictures. By this point in the trio's career, budget cuts at Columbia had forced the trio to make heavy use of stock footage from previously completed shorts, so the trio was able to complete the films without Shemp. New footage was filmed of the other two Stooges, Moe and Larry, and edited together with stock footage. When continuity required that Shemp appear in these new scenes, they used Shemp's stand in, Joe Palma, to be a body double for him, appearing only from behind or with an object obscuring his face. Palmer became the original fake Shemp, although the term was not officially in use at the time. Then they say that Sam Raimi, who's a professed Stooges fan, was the one who coined the term in The Evil Dead. Um, Most of the crew and cast abandoned the project after production went well behind the scheduled 6 weeks. So he was forced to use himself, his diehard friends Bruce Campbell, Rob Tappert, Josh Becker, assistant Dave Goodman, and brother Ted Raimi as fake Shemps, and the term stuck. So I just thought that's kind of hilarious, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's also sounds like a good love song. Like I'm like a Mo without a Shemp. You know, I just need my fake Shemp in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Won't you be my Shemp? Won't you be my fake Shemp?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it came out in 1981 and it launched a franchise including Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, the Evil Dead reboot, Ash versus the Evil Dead TV show, comic books, and video games. So I know you said you watched Army of Darkness. Did you watch anything else? Did you watch the reboot or the TV show or anything like that?
I started to watch the Ash versus Evil Dead, but lately it's just so hard to like commit time. There's too many TV shows and movies out there, so
I
I
gotcha.
think I jumped out after 2 or 3 episodes.
Okay.
I think we were doing it on one of those stars free things. We were like, I'm not going to subscribe just for this, but I do plan to hunt it down someday, just to kind of close out that chapter.
Yeah, I think I saw the first episode and it was uh I don't know. It didn't immediately strike me as something I wanted to continue watching, but like you
Mhm.
said, I do want to go back to it, but I just haven't had the chance to do that. But I always love seeing Bruce Campbell in anything, so I'm
Yeah.
glad that he's always getting a chance to continue making
Hmm.
movies and working in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So the movie starts with a foggy screen and the title card immediately in all red, "The Evil Dead." And this made me feel like, damn, they're not fucking around. Like this is a tightly packed, like I think it's 180 minutes or no, I'm sorry, like an hour and 20 minutes, so that'd be like 80 something minutes long, and
Yeah.
there was no room for like character development very much or anything like that. It's just like they throw you into it.
Yeah, I definitely I had that as a note, was like there's like just a couple of little like, here's some exposition for you, get ready, here it comes, like here comes the
Yeah,
blood, like we're just gonna get right to it. Yeah.
and honestly, like it's not until maybe the halfway point or maybe even more that we kind of see Ash jump into the lead role because it's
Hmm.
kind of shared with the other
Scotty.
Scotty. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they did give Ash kind of his own moments, which were really touching, and we'll talk about those. But so then we see some branches and a swampy area, and the camera is floating around and going up and down. Very weird angles. From now on, I'm just going to call that demon cam because
Yeah.
that's what it is, or that's what it represents, or spirit. But I just call it demon cam because it's fun. The opening sequence of the evil moving over the pond was achieved by having Bruce Campbell push Sam Raimi in a dinghy while he filmed the shot. So I think that that's fun. There was a lot of different cool shots in here that kept the movie interesting. You know?
Yeah, like super. I was like fairly impressed by how sophisticated some of those shots were for what was clearly not a high budget film, but just like the opening tracking shots, like you said, following the car, sweeping through the woods, going over the water, all that stuff. It was just like one of those. My first thought was like, this movie is so very punk rock almost. It's just like, here's the little we got. We're gonna get every last drop out of this. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna make this work no matter what. And beyond that, like they kind of even rose above that with some of the stuff they were able to pull off.
Yeah, this movie is definitely more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next, we hear a woman singing, and we see the car. And if you're familiar with Sam Raimi, you know about this car. It's the 1973 beige Oldsmobile Delta 88 that has been in nearly every one of Sam Raimi's movies. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it turned up in Spider-Man. I can't remember
Yeah.
if he did he work it into the Lord of the Rings somehow, or no. I don't think he
Uh,
did. Right?
well, that's Peter Jackson that did Lord of the
Oh
Rings,
no, it's
right?
Peter Jackson. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
What? Oh my God, that's
Well,
embarrassing.
he did it.
Um,
It was in the Evil Dead, Crime Wave, Evil Dead 2, Dark Man, Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
A
it was
Simple
in.
Plan. Yeah, so
Yeah,
in Army of Darkness, there's a rumor that um, the Delta 88 was underneath like canvas. Oh no, I'm sorry. Army of Darkness so definitely was there. It's
yeah.
obviously there. But another movie, and I'll get to that in a second. But A Simple Plan, The Gift, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, Drag Me to Hell, and also the Evil Dead remake. And then in 1985 he did The Quick and the Dead, and which is a Western movie. Which have you ever seen The Quick and the Dead? It's a
A
lot of
long
fun.
time ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It,
That's
it,
Sharon Stone, right?
yeah,
And
Sharon Stone, Leonardo
yeah,
DiCaprio. I saw
yeah,
that in the pandemic and had never
hmm,
seen it before, and I had so much fun with it.
yeah.
But the rumor has it that the Delta 88 was hidden under a cover in the barn, or the chassis.
Chassis.
Wow, chassis
Yeah.
was used for the wagon. And
Okay.
then in 1999, it appeared in For Love of the Game, but the scene that it was in was cut during editing.
Huh.
Also, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell have a close relationship with the Coen brothers. And the Delta 88 has also appeared in a few of their films, including Blood Simple, Fargo, Raising Arizona, and The Big Lebowski.
Nice.
So yeah, it's like this is a very important car for them. And I know you said you read Bruce Campbell's book. I want to read that, but I have a quote from there. Bruce Campbell would say in his book that the classic, which is the name that is what they call it, is the same car that Sam Raimi's mom would use to drop them off at the theater to watch movies in high school. And he joked that the vehicle is so important to Raimi because he lost his virginity in it. He said this car knew where the bodies were buried. It had some deep history. I'm not a method actor by any means, but it was really cool to have that crappy car back. It meant a lot. It made this real. So they had a history with the car ever since going back to them making Super 8 films together. They would often collaborate with Sam's brother Ted Raimi, and Bruce would became the actor of the group, as he was the one that the girls wanted to look at.
Yeah,
So
I like that sense of like brotherhood and loyalty among all of them, and how they do tend to always kind of pop up in each other's projects and stuff. And the car is just even more of a symbol of that.
yeah, we're like almost 40 years since this movie came out, and they're still working together. That's
Yeah.
just great. I love that. Okay, so back to the movie. So the camera is switching back and forth from the car that has five passengers in it, two guys and three girls, to the low level, quick moving camera shot, the demon cam, that we call it. There's that distinct whooshing sound too.
Yeah.
Um, the car seems to be driving fast around these country curves, and as we see a huge pickup truck coming towards them. And this pickup truck had um,
Something Mary on the bumper, right?
yeah, the truck has
Yeah.
Lazy Mary spray
Lazy
painted on
Mary.
its
Yeah,
front
yeah,
bumper.
yeah.
So the driver asks. So this movie is kind of funny because they never they never really say all the characters' names, and
Hmm.
so like even though I know based on IMDb like what the characters' names are, if we're going throughout the story, we don't yet know what their names are, and for some characters, we're like half an hour, 45 minutes in before we know their names, or even further in until we know relationships.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of weird, and I don't know if that had to do with the storytelling, or like they wanted it like that, or it was just bad storytelling, whatever. But regardless, um, so the driver, who we know is Scotty, asks Ash, who's in the back seat, where they are, and Ash responds that they've just crossed into Tennessee, and we don't know it yet, but Ash is going to be our hero. And man, does he look so young in this.
Yeah, I noted the very first shot of him. I said Lloyd Christmas hair, like Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber. Like for some reason, it's like that straight across. It looks like a bowl cut, which it's not, as you discover through the movie. But like, it shook me because at first I was like, "Whoa, he looks young," and then I was like, "What's going on with his hair?" It was crazy. And that
Yeah,
map, like bringing that up, it wasn't even like a traditional road map. It was like this, like some art. It almost looked like an article in a magazine with this like 3D picture of mountains with this winding road. But he's like tracing it with his finger and somehow like, oh yeah, we're right about here. It's like,
Yeah,
what is he doing? Yeah.
yeah, and that's funny because you he projects that he knows what he's saying, but through his actions, it looks like maybe he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah,
And
proto
that character, yeah, exactly,
Ash.
that character trait is seen throughout the series, which I love so much.
Yeah, they definitely they seized on that and started turning the volume up on it later on. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, So the driver's not paying attention. He's kind of looking, glancing back at Ash. And as they crest a hill, they almost crash head on into this truck as Ash yells, "Turn!" And we see a really comical shot of one of the women in the front seat screaming with her hands to the sides of her face. Like, you know that it was just like an insert shot. She's like,
Yeah.
"Ah," but it was pretty funny. The driver, Scotty, blames the steering wheel, and Ash says he doesn't know why because he took it to the mechanic yesterday and they gave it a clean bill of health. Um, so us as an audience, we're kind of left to believe to think, did that weird camera view, that demon cam, have something to do with it? Because it went right up to them in the road and then stopped right when the accident almost happened.
Yeah, and I did notice the steering wheel. I kind of want to go back and watch it now to see if Scotty was like flicking it around, but it definitely looked like it spun a little unnaturally. So that was a kind of a cool.
Oh, I
Uh,
didn't even notice. You're right. I
yeah,
want to go
it
back
felt
there
like
too.
it like kind of jerked like one way and then the other, but not in a way that his hands were moving, almost like he was fighting the car. So it was a good touch. I didn't even think on it until like towards the end of the movie, and I was like, oh, maybe that's where it caught him. Yeah.
Yeah. So Scotty says the only thing that works is the horn, which he proceeds to honk. As he does, he passes two fishermen on the side of the road and who kind of wave at him because they thought he was honking at him. And then Scotty yells out the window, "Go to hell. I'm not honking at you," which is a very early instance of comedy that will not be found too much in the rest of this movie.
Yeah, Scotty's kind of a dick, but and I know like a very terrible driver too because he's constantly looking backwards to talk to Ash or to yell at the friendly people waving on the road on this very windy mountain country road, and that already got me up. I was like, God damn, look at the road, man.
Yeah, and also we a little bit later in this same drive, we see him clearly sipping a clear liquid from a canning jar, which leads me to believe it's moonshine.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
which explains his erratic driving.
yeah. True. Yep.
So Scotty says the place they're driving to, a cabin, is a bit run down, but right up in the mountains, and they're getting it cheap because it might be in really bad shape. No one has seen it yet. Both Ash and the woman sitting next to him say it might not be bad. It actually might be nice. But the woman in front says it might be a real pit. As they get to their turn, they pass a white sign that says, "Dangerous bridge. Travel at your own risk. 3 tons load limit." And that has kind of rusted out bullet holes in it. And see, I'm from the city, but my wife is a country girl. And when we visit her family in the country, I see signs like this all the time, bullet ridden. And that just means you're in the country. But
Yep.
if we saw that in the city, you better not stop at that stop sign.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I grew up
So,
in Wyoming, so it's pretty common sight where I was from as well. Yeah.
yeah, that was going to be my question. You said, where did you grow up? You said it was in Wyoming?
Yeah, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Not so much in the city you'd see stuff like that, but if you ever went out hiking or out in the mountains, it's very common to, people just driving by and taking pot shots at street signs and stuff. Yeah, not unusual.
Forgive me, do you currently still live there?
No, I'm in Los Angeles now.
You're in
About
Los
as
Angeles.
about as opposite from Wyoming as you could possibly get. Yeah.
Okay, so how long have you been in Los Angeles?
Oh gosh, since 2002, I think.
Oh,
It's
wow.
hard
So
to
you've been there
remember.
a while. Yeah. It's
Yeah, they
almost
say
20
once
years.
once you pass 7 years in California, you never leave. We'll see if that's true, but
Yeah.
it seems like it's going to hold.
So what took you out there? Was it the writing thing that took you out there?
Yeah. I mean, I got my playwriting degree, and I thought I'd come out here and work on screenplays, and then I instantly started writing books. So go figure.
Yeah, I did see on your website that you had a bunch of plays and screenplays written.
Yeah. Hopefully, get back into that realm sometime soon as well. Yeah.
Okay, so as they start crossing the bridge, we get a shot of under the bridge, and wooden beams start falling into the water below, and they scream from the car, "Jesus Christ! The whole thing's gonna fall apart on us."
Oh, I was just the shot again. Like I was surprised again, like the sophisticated. I don't know. I was in my head. I was thinking it was going to be even lower budget than it was. I guess because this they had like iron trestles and all this crap falling out from under the bridge, and a, pretty impressive shot from below. But I was like, that is a rickety bridge, man. I would not have crossed it.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
either. So Ash says, "Don't let this fool you, girls. This thing is as solid as a rock." And just as he says that, the tire falls into a section of broken wooden planks. And then Ash opens his door and looks outside just as more metal falls into the water below. And a really comical shot of Ash with his eyes wide, and he quickly goes back inside. And then the car manages to drive out of the broken section and successfully navigates the bridge. I'm sure this won't come back at all in the story.
No, no, not at all. And just I like the idea of them running, almost running towards their doom because they have to like gun the car, So you got the screeching tires, and they're like, accelerating towards their demise almost.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. So on your website, I saw that you had a section for um, a, a Route 66 Noir. That it was a trip that you took. Is that correct?
yeah. We drove LA to Chicago on Route 66, and I keep meaning to keep the project updated. Basically, I bought 66 postcards and got 66 volunteers and sent them each 3 sentences of this story. And I'm putting it all together on Instagram. So slowly unraveling that out there.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, the
Yeah.
reason I brought it up is because I also took that trip, but
Yeah.
we started in Chicago and we ended in Oklahoma because we couldn't make the full trip.
Yeah.
But I do remember going over some kind of rickety bridges
Yes.
on
Yeah.
Route 66.
Yep.
So we kind of have taken a trip like this as well, you know?
Yeah. My,
Um,
my, speaking on that, my wife is a photographer, and she likes to do videos of going over bridges, and we went over one that was just felt like we had like 1 inch on either side of the car, and I was like nervous going over, and she's like, oh, I messed the shot up, let's do it again. And I was like, we had to drive that bridge like 4 times, and I was just like, we are gonna die on this bridge. Yeah.
yeah, I remember the same feeling. Like
Yeah.
we were driving some parts of it at night when we shouldn't have,
Mm-hmm.
because we tried to stay as close. Because if listeners haven't taken this Route 66, some of it has been taken over by like actual highway, and so you're just driving down Route 66 and the highway at the same time. But some of it is adjoining an actual highway, and it's old and it's rickety, and it's like some parts are like not very well kept, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going through these small communities, or no community at all, with no lights, nothing to help you maneuver at night.
Yeah.
And we should not have been driving at night, and we did anyway because we were young and dumb. But it kind of reminded me of this scene, and I just thought, when I saw that Route 66 on your website, I was like, oh man, that's great.
Yeah.
So they drive onto a very remote, unpaved path leading up to a small wooden cabin, and the score has this pulsing like bump bump like every 3 or 4 seconds, and it feels like it's your heart beating, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But as they get closer to the house, we see the sound was actually a porch swing beating against the house.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't talk about a lot of From Evil Dead, is the score.
Yeah.
The score for this was really effective.
Yeah, I thought so too. Very well. I mean, I don't know if he, just found stock music and fit it to his taste, or if that was like if someone did the music. I didn't check the credits, but yeah, I was very impressed with the overall use of sound and music throughout.
Yeah, so the music was done by Joseph Loduca. And
Oh,
I think
cool.
he did a great job with it.
Yes, he did.
So they all exit the car, but for some reason, Scotty is the only one to approach the house, looking hesitantly over his shoulder as at his friends as he does. This is where like the Sith score kind of kicks up here as he
Mhm.
approaches the doorway, and he retrieves a key above the entrance. As he does, the swing stops abruptly, swinging into the house.
At which point, everyone should have left. That was that's my note was like, time to go, guys. Like, yeah, I can't believe you would stay after something like that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of small events that happen
Oh yeah.
that, if by themselves, are nothing, but when put together, your ass should have been out.
Yeah, yeah. The
I
red flags
say,
keep coming after this.
yeah, I say that, but in real life, I don't. I would be like, nah, you're crazy, you know.
I don't know, my first red flag was that just the approach shot when they first kind of reveal the cabin. I would have already kind of been like, I don't know if I want to be here after dark. Like this is not a pleasant looking cabin.
Well, yeah, that's my thought as a city boy, but you're a country boy. What?
Even then, yeah, I mean, still, like I'm, yeah,
You
yeah,
have
it's
your
just
own
very,
premonition, right?
yeah, it's very creepy. Over, I mean, obviously intentionally so, but
Yeah, yeah. The first shot of the cabin looks great. So we do see Scotty kind of fumbling with the keys, and this is going to come back later on in the movie. But after unlocking the door, we see a great shot of the darkened interior of the cabin, dust in the air, and a deer head mounted on a wall above a mantle. So we know already what kind of like cabin we're going to be in. It's like a hunter's retreat or something like that.
yeah,
So the others are unloading the car as Scott tours the cabin. He comes across a set of chains hanging from a wall. Red flag number two or
yeah,
three at this point.
yeah. There's also stepped over the chain, the cellar door with the like rusty chain sitting on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
We see a cow skull, as well as some other animal bones, and these bones were kind of the bones were hanging from the ceiling. This was an homage or reference to Texas Chainsaw Massacre because
yeah,
Sam Raimi loved that movie.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. I feel like you shouldn't be. I don't know if it's a red flag to see taxidermy in a secluded cabin. I don't know what because this is what you signed up for, but at the same time, no, I don't.
Yeah, I feel like they should have explained. I mean, that's somewhere where we could have used a little bit of story explanation because I don't. And maybe I missed it, but did anyone say like whose cabin this is or how they chose this place? Because it seems like that would have been the time to be like, oh, guys, the person I rented it from says they hunt in the summer and that's what all this stuff is. Because otherwise, like you said, like you open this door, there's like bits of crap, animals hanging off of chains and rusty, axes and crap on the walls and like that, I couldn't stay there at that point unless I knew there was a solid explanation for it.
Yeah, and so my question for you is: I know you said you grew up in the country. Have you ever stayed in like a secluded cabin before, like this? And if so,
Yeah.
rate the creep factor for us.
Honestly, though, the one my friend had an uncle who had a log cabin up in the mountains in Wyoming, and that was probably like I hate camping. Like overall, I'm not big into sleeping in a tent. Like I prefer to have a structure around me, so that was all right. Having a house. Um, but it honestly wasn't too bad. It was just a regular old log cabin in the woods. Nothing too creepy about it. There's just something. It was well kept, I guess I should say. It's one room, very rustic, but like something like what you see in this movie, everything just kind of adds up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the paint's peeling, and there's mold, and there's dead animals, and chains, and axes and stuff. Yeah,
So it's funny. I was reading that they had a really hard time trying to find the correct cabin that they wanted to shoot this movie in, and they finally found this cabin, but it was so run down, and it was the floors were covered in horse manure,
oh man.
and it was run down, so they had to fully renovate it just to get it to look as run down as it looks in the movie.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and they shot in Tennessee because they are originally from Michigan and they wanted to shoot in Michigan, but it was in the fall and they wanted to avoid the harsh Michigan winters.
Yeah.
But in the funny turn of events, Michigan had a very like timid year winter wise,
Hmm.
and Tennessee had like the coldest winter they'd had in recent
Huh.
years. So they were out in this, out in the forest, and they didn't have like good shelter or whatever. So everybody was like freezing as they
Yeah.
were filming this. So you'd understand why half the crew or more left, and that's why they needed all those fake chefs. Later, we see Cheryl sketching a grandfather clock. Suddenly, the clock chimes out at 6:52 p.m., which don't question me on that because it's been a long time since I've had to tell time on a real clock, and I might have embarrassed myself. But I think it was 6:52 p.m., which no clock should ever be set to chime at. And also, the pendulum had stopped at the apogee of its swing. I did have to look that word up, but you better be impressed.
Yeah.
Which it definitely should not be doing. So, already some more bad omens here. A strong breeze blows through the open window she is sitting next to, and we hear a deep, demonic sounding voice saying, "Join us," over and over. And we hear that swing bumping against the house again. I don't know what else they need. How, how many more signs do they have? Do you
Yeah,
know?
it's amazing. And not another recurring theme I think through the early part of the movie is like weird shit and bad shit starts to happen. And they're not really talking to each other about it. Like I guess they kind of established that walking in, like everybody sees that chair swing stop, and then like a half a second later, Ash is just like, "What to do? Let's unload the trunk." It's like no one's like, "Hey, what just happened there?" And that keeps happening again here, like you said, with the voices and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Cheryl looks down at her sketch, and it appears her hand has been possessed as she is no longer in control of it, and it starts to very roughly sketch out what looks like a book with a face on it, and it's ripping the paper as it goes. And just as quickly as it started, it's over, and she looks down at her drawing. And we reckon, if you've never seen a movie or if you've never seen any of the Evil Deads or Army of Darkness, you don't know what that is, but we can recognize it as the Necronomicon.
Yeah, and the whole bad hand analogy or bad hand motif that kind of carries through the film, through the
Yeah,
series, I should say. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
yeah, her hand like that when it starts turning like weird and blue and veiny as she's like scrawling that square in the paper.
Yeah. So then she hears a pounding coming from the floor, and she sees a hatch in the floor that is chained up, and the pounding is coming from there. And again, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The woman appears scared and dumbfounded. So I know that if they leave now, there's no movie. But come on, guys.
Yeah, it's time. At least try. Like someone mention it. Like have a debate at this point.
Yeah, like let's vote or
Yep,
something. You know.
exactly. Yeah.
So there's a kind of cool shot or a transition shot here. We see a juicer filled with red liquid, almost overflowing, and it's mixing a drink. The four friends are settling down for dinner, and then Scotty, being the asshole he is, mumbles under his breath, "Dead bodies in the cellar. Dead bodies in the cellar."
Yeah.
And the woman Cheryl tells him to cut it out. Honestly, this is so fucking funny to me because it's how people fuck around with each other like in real life.
Yeah, and my note I wrote at this point was Scotty should die first. I found him so annoying at that point. I was like, "Come on, dude."
Yeah, and I find I like this sort of thing when people's relationships seem real. Like I found the relationship between the two women in your story very real.
Hmm.
Um, there there was one point. Forgive me if I'm wrong, because I've been doing a lot of reading recently.
Hmm.
But there was one point where they had a signal when they're in the movie theaters. They have a signal for like to let each other know that they're there by just touching each other's hand very
Yeah,
lightly.
yeah, yeah. Just kind of a little shared contact thing that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that so touching, and it just added like depth to their relationship, and
Hmm.
uh, we kind of see that later on in Ash's relationship with Linda, but it just helps. It's just like a 1 2 second thing, but it helps to establish. You care more about the
Yeah,
characters when you
exactly.
do
Yeah,
that.
you got to give people something to hold on to, so they're not just these cardboard victims
Yeah.
for the demons.
Ooh, am I glad that was in your book? Because that would have been embarrassing otherwise.
Yeah.
I would have left it in though.
Yeah.
So Ash proposes making a toast, but again, he has trouble kind of making a sentence in Greek. Such a great foreshadowing for a plot point later on, and then repeated throughout the series is that Ash can't recite words or phrases in other languages.
Oh, and I meant to look it up. Do you know what it was that he said?
Uh,
Um,
in this movie,
yeah, I wanted to see if there was some little Easter egg hidden in his toast, but I can't remember.
I went through all the all the trivia like on IMDb, and nothing came up about that. But that
Okay.
doesn't mean it means anything. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything. But there is a part on the recording that was in another language that did mean something, and I'll get to that
Okay.
when we get there. But um, so as he finishes his toast, we see over. I believe it's. I don't remember which woman's shoulder it is that the hatch has flown open with a loud thud. And they all run to investigate. And there's great music here as well. They look down the hatch into the cellar, and one of the women says it was probably an animal. I think it was. I believe it was Cheryl who said it was
Mhm.
probably an animal. And then this is where Scotty makes an asshole of himself and says, "Animal? That has to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Jesus Christ. So, like you're saying, he just like continues to be this. At first, I thought he was the lovable asshole, but
Yeah.
as the movie progresses, he's just an asshole.
Yeah, it was either this one or before with the dead bodies in the cellar. He had some kind of throwaway line too, where he was like, "Oh, I should hit you in the mouth," or some weird like thing that he says to his girlfriend. I was like, "That's a really weird." It was like play, like quote unquote playful, but I was like, "Wow, that dude's a dick." I can't remember what he said, but yeah,
Yeah. So then Scotty says that Cheryl should go check out the noise, and she tells Scotty to go fuck himself. Actually, I may have added that, but she should have said it. So Scotty goes down by himself. They all wait in silence except for the crickets, these very loud crickets. And finally, Ash asks Scotty if he's found anything, and there's nothing, just silence. And I'm kind of like waiting for a jump scare here, which they build like this anticipation, this dread for it, but it doesn't happen, which is unreleased pressure that I
yeah,
think really helps later on.
yeah, yeah. I thought
Uh,
it was one of those kind of like one of those like Simpsons or Family Guy gags that has to they do the joke like five, six, seven times just to get it's like it builds, it releases, where's this going? Then it builds back up again. I felt that with that tension where I was like, oh, he's gonna jump out, and then he doesn't, and then after a second you relax. You're kind of like, okay, he's just gonna come walking back, and then like 5 more seconds, like no, where is he? Like what happened?
yeah, they
Yeah.
there are definitely some jump scares in here, but they don't feel as gimmicky as other horror movies have jump scares. They
Hmm.
feel more natural and also well placed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not necessarily a fan of jump scares. Like I don't have too much of a problem with it, but they can be overused.
It feels like cheating to me most of the time, unless it's done really, really well.
Yeah,
I think it's not fair to turn the volume up to 50 and then claim that you scared the audience because
yeah.
it's just a natural reaction to a loud noise.
You just
So
screamed in my ear. Of course, I'm
yeah,
gonna.
exactly. Yeah.
Ash asks his girlfriend Linda to get him a flashlight. Finally, this is when we find out her name. And but she says there isn't one. She gets him a lantern instead. Ash descends into the darkness, and I hate. I don't know if you notice these stairs, but I
Mhm.
hate these types of stairs with no back behind them, so somebody can reach through
Yes. Yeah.
and grab you. They're unnecessarily creepy and dangerous. I think they should
Exactly.
be outlawed.
I would agree. Yeah.
And like the same. I don't know if you've seen Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, not
Have
for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, it's funny. That was Max's movie that he came on to my show to
Oh,
talk
nice.
about. But
Yeah.
yeah, they have the same thing, and Tarman reaches through and and hurts somebody. You can
Oh,
get hurt with
yeah.
these things.
Exactly.
So I don't know if you want to sign my petition, but I'll send it to you later on about
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
outlawing
get
these
OSHA on
things.
this. Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it. This was all just a big ruse to get you to sign my.
Like,
It's a
take a
it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Yeah, we're coming for big staircase. We're gonna take him
Exactly.
down.
So then the camera pans around the darkened stone lined room, water dripping from the pipes. Ash hears a sound behind a door and walks towards it. It's a very atmospheric setting. I love this. And the door creaks open, great sound effects throughout the whole movie. And what's funny was the cabin itself didn't actually have a cellar. So they shot this in somebody's farmhouse, one of the producers' farmhouse or something.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Of I could not get the geography of this cabin right in my head. At any point in the movie when they're leaving and coming and going into cellars. Like it's kind of a cool effect actually, where it's just this tiny little cabin, but so sprawling on the inside somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I also would be like, wait, where the cellar door is in somebody's bedroom, but I always thought it was in the living room, or
Yeah.
maybe it's in
Yeah.
the living
Yeah.
room. Maybe there's more than one cellar door. I don't really know. It kind of keeps you off guard.
Yeah.
So Ash goes deeper into the dungeon, and suddenly Scotty appears out of nowhere and goes "boo," which startles Ash. He says he wants to show Ash some stuff, and then we see a pile of shotgun shells and an actual shotgun, or a boomstick if you're nasty, and other things piled up on a desk. So I got a question for you here. Did you notice anything by this desk, or
The Hills Have Eyes poster.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
hills
thought
have
that was a
access.
nice little thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
oddly out of place for everything else. This what gets revealed later on in terms of this. Who has been in this basement and how proper they sound on the recording, and it's like, oh, they
oh,
were also
I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, you're right.
yes, like why they're also a B horror movie fan somehow. Yeah.
We contain multitudes, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the ripped poster of The Hills Have Eyes is there because it was a reference to a ripped poster for Jaws that appeared in The Hills Have Eyes.
Hmm.
Sam Raimi and the others interpreted that as Wes Craven, suggesting that The Hills Have Eyes was much more frightening than Jaws. Thus, they showed a ripped Hills Have Eyes poster in their movie to say that their movie was even scarier.
Huh. Interesting.
And I kind of like this playfulness between directors. I know he has something similar with Wes Craven with the Freddy's uh, razor, his razor glove appears
Hmm.
in some of his movies, and Wes Craven has some evil
Oh, interesting.
that stuff in his movie, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Um,
And if mine gets adapted to a movie, I'm gonna have them put like a ripped SpongeBob SquarePants the movie poster on the wall and be like, "We're definitely scarier than
with
the
just like
movie."
a bloody handprint, it's just like on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ash picks a book that looks just like the book that Cheryl Demon sketched earlier. He starts flipping through it, disgusted by the illustrations he sees. Demons and eyeballs and skulls. Scott also finds a dagger with skulls carved at the top into the, what's it called, hilt, or into the
Yeah,
handle.
I guess the handle hilt. Yeah.
Yeah. And he jokes to Ash saying, "This looks like your old girlfriend," to which Ash smiles. They then take everything upstairs to share with the group, including the recorder.
And that the knife kind of looks like Evil Ash, right, from Army of Darkness. Am I making stuff up?
The
Because of the way that
knife.
the handle, the skull, because doesn't it have like a little like spine thing arching over the top, kind of like
Oh,
his
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God,
yeah,
Evil Ash. I love
kind of
Evil Ash so much.
yeah,
I'm sure it is. I mean, he references himself so much, and
yeah.
it's the same story, you know.
Yeah.
So later, Ash has started up the recorder and is playing the tape. The original script called for all the characters to be smoking weed when they were first listening to the tape, and the actors decided to try this for real. And then the entire scene had to be reshot later on due to their uncontrollable behavior.
Oh,
So maybe
I'd love
don't
to see
smoke
those
weed.
outtakes. Yeah. I think the other thing, kind of I meant to mention earlier in terms of like establishing how stupid these characters are when Scotty finds that shotgun in the basement and I think puts a shell in it. I can't remember, but then points it straight at Ash's face. And like Ash kind of swats him away, and then they have a laugh about it. Now it's
Yeah,
like,
that is true.
oh, I'd be pissed off if someone did that to me.
Like 70s and 80s friends, man. There was nothing
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. Oh, you almost blew my head off, dude. All right. Anyway.
Uh, on the tape, in which the demon resurrection passages are read aloud, some of the words spoken, which appear to be Latin, sound like Sam and Rob, das ist Hikers dan die Roza, which means Sam and Rob are the hikers on the road, as it was actually Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert who play the fishermen that wave to the car as it passes them near the start of the film.
Nice.
I just
Yeah.
thought that was so cool. That's that thing I was talking about earlier about the languages and all that.
Yeah. 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 And this is definitely the brief but necessary exposition that we need to set up the rest of the film. It's very it's very like on the nose. Like this is everything that's about to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah,
kind of sums it up for you, and you're like, great, we told you what it is. Now believe us and let us tell the story.
exactly. Yeah.
The voice is of a professor who had excavated the ruins of a place called Kandar and is now back at this very cabin to study his findings and do research with his wife. He goes on to say, I believe I have made a significant find in the Kandarian runes, a volume of ancient Sumerian burial practices and funerary incantations. It is entitled Naturum de Montum, roughly translated Book of the Dead. The book is bound in human flesh and inked in human blood. It deals with demons and demon resurrection and those forces which roam the forest and dark bowers of man's domain. The first few pages warn that these enduring creatures may lie dormant, but are never truly dead. They may be recalled to active life through the incantations presented in this book. It is through the recitation of these passages that the demons are given license to possess the living. I mean, what would you do if somebody is reading that out loud, like on a
Yeah,
tape?
well, and not only that, but like you've got this book in your lap that it's clearly referring to, and again, just one of those things where people in horror movies don't seem to connect to the world around them. They're like, oh, this book is bound in human flesh, and nobody like backs away from the book or flings it across the room or like, oh God, I touched that thing, like.
Yeah,
Uh,
let me lick it. I want to see how it
yeah,
tastes.
exactly. Like, just I mean, it's so they all like Ed Gein's relatives or something. They're like, oh yeah, we touch human flesh all the time. No big
Yeah.
deal.
So at this point, Cheryl switches the recorder off, saying she didn't want to hear it anymore. And Cheryl is the one who has the most sense throughout this whole
Yep.
movie.
Hmm.
Like justice for Cheryl because her character is treated unfairly in
Yes.
this movie. Scott was trying to scare her, making scary noises as thunder could be heard in the background. He then proceeds to turn the recorder back on, and at this point, they have these omens and all that. But if Scotty would have not turned the recorder back on, everything would have been fine. So everything that happens from this point forward is Scotty's fault.
Yep.
He's a complete asshole, and he's responsible for the death of all his friends.
He gets what he
Um,
deserves.
yeah, yeah. Next, we hear a series of words in another language, most likely Latin. And as soon as the words are heard in the air, the demon cam kicks back up and is flying above the house, making weird noises. So we know whatever is being said is bad news. As the incantations continue, we see a glowing box outside in the forest that seems to be coming out further and further and glowing brighter and brighter, like red orange. I wasn't quite sure what that was. Did you have a sense for what was going on there?
Yeah, it's sort of not to go back to my book, but this theme of like almost that the area itself is like this living thing. I really started having fun, like kind of dissecting, um, you know, trying to keep the horror movie logic going and beyond just like not just like, hey, why don't they get out of here, but there are certain times where like, well, why didn't the demon just kill these people at this point? And I think part of that is that the whole area kind of is the character, you know what I mean? Like it's this giant thing that is like lurking underneath and just coming out through the cracks and the seams where it can.
Okay.
And I thought that was a great effect too. Just that just bloody bright red light. Again, just like kind of punching above their weight class with what they did visually on their budget was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like this giant sister boil coming out of the earth, and
Yeah,
telling it.
and that's a thematically. I feel like that repeats. We'll get to it, towards the
Yeah,
end, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So Cheryl again tells them to shut it off, but they do not listen to her until finally she leaps up and screams for them to shut it off. And just as she does that, the window bursts behind her, a branch having broken through. No, there's no turning back now.
Yeah.
So Ash and Scott are arguing over Scott's actions, and this is where like Scott's like, she's acting like a little child. I was just joking around. It's like, dude, she's not having a good time. Like, why are you continuing to press this button?
Yeah. and there's nowhere for literally nowhere any of them can go. So it's not like, oh, I hate this party, I'm going home. Like, nope, we're stuck here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So later at night, Ash and Linda decide to stay up and talk, but she wants to check on Cheryl first. As she does, we see kind of Ash checking a jewelry box that was in his pocket. And as Linda comes back, he pretends to be asleep and he has the box in his hand. She slowly goes for the box, checking to see if he's asleep, and he keeps closing his eyes just in time. Eventually, she grabs it and he quote unquote wakes up. And that's a very cute, tender moment here.
Yeah, and a good there's a great it's foreshadowing almost to what happens at the end between them, and it's sort of, at first it's like playful, and then it feels like you think something scary is going to happen because he does these really really tight close-ups on their eyes, which in part is to show the game, but it's also kind of like it's really intense, like having their whole face fill up the screen like that, and then her hand and the eye and the hand and the eye, and it just um he comes back to it in a very great way at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and here it's just like a tender moment, just really quick, just exposition on where they're at in their relationship. It's very loving and caring. So I really like this part.
Yeah.
It's surprising to find it in this type of movie based on what's going to be happening later on. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is just kind of that the little piece of sugar for the audience of kind of like, well, one of these two people is going to be the person you're rooting for. Like they're the only people doing nice things for each other in the movie at this point. I think. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Linda opens it, and it's a necklace with a magnifying glass, and she loves it. What I thought was funny was that there was a whole plot device specifically set up for this magnifying glass that they had to cut out, and it was going to be that she uses the magnifying glass to set the Necronomicon on fire.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, because
But
they were
but
very heavy on it at the beginning. Yeah.
yeah, like they spend a lot of time developing or showing this gift, and it comes back in the end, and we'll talk about it then. But it's in a much smaller role than it was what it was originally going to be.
Yeah. I also like that he puts it on her, and she like has it clutched in both hands and looks at herself in the mirror and goes, "Oh, it's lovely." And like you're covering it with your hands, but yes, I suppose. Yeah.
I'm sure she was just happy to get something from her boyfriend.
Yeah.
As they make out, the demon cam is outside being total creeper, peeping Tom, floating, looking at them making out, and then it kind of floats over to Scott and Shelley's room. We never learn her name at this point. We still don't know her name. I just found it on IMDb, and we learned it later on. But I was done describing her as with a woman or Scott's girlfriend or something.
Also, an amazing shot. I just want to point that out for anyone. Like, just I couldn't figure out how they did it, honestly, on that budget and 80s technology, but it's so smooth the way that camera goes. Like one window on the porch, around the corner, and like not just it's amazing. Just the way the sweep of it is great.
So I believe, if I remember correctly, so they put the camera on a tripod and then they strapped the tripod to a 2x4, and then they just walked around with it.
Huh. That's so smooth. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Like it's a
yeah,
great shot.
they're
Yeah.
they're like very ingenious when it comes to these shots.
Yeah.
It's amazing what can be done under the budget
Yeah.
with a smaller budget. The demon cam is watching Scott and Shelley undressing in their room. Then to Cheryl, who's combing her hair in her room. As she looks at her drawing, she hears "Join us" from outside, and she looks outside the window. Then she leaves her room and goes outside. What the actual fuck, Cheryl?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just go wandering into a dark forest?
You're the only. We were rooting for you. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
She was the sensible one, very briefly.
yeah. And so she's in her robe, asking if anyone's outside. And she walks into the woods. Cheryl, you're dumb. That has got to be. I just want to say that has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I just wanted to call back one of Scotty's lines.
Yeah.
Um, so she says, "I know you're out there. Heard you in the cellar." So, question for you: who do you think she's talking to? She didn't see anybody in the cellar, so if she was talking about spirits or demons, if so, why call out to them? Like
Yeah.
Cheryl, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. We defended you from Scott.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it could be that she's trying to be brave if she thinks it's just somebody in the woods that's fucking with him, and she's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna call you on it. Or I kind of wish they had kind of looked at that part of the script a little closer and have her maybe like, hey, Scotty, knock it off, or just something that kind of indicates that she's got a better reason to go to go chasing someone saying join us into the woods, like
Yeah, that's a great point right there. You just solved it in like what
yeah.
10 seconds of talking. Just have her think that it's Scotty.
Yeah, but
That's
it's also a horror movie, so logic abounds. Yeah.
yeah. So then we hear a loud growling noise, and the demon cam is back, rushing through the forest, knocking down trees in its wake. Then we see branches slowly growing towards Cheryl, and I have to say a trigger warning here for sexual assaults. To make this quick and not get too much into detail here, the vines or branches sexually assault Cheryl violently as she screams for help. Raimi has admitted to regretting shooting this scene because it's unnecessary. And what they're saying was it wasn't that way in the shooting script, but as they were shooting it, they kept getting progressively and progressively worse. And then in editing, they just went for it.
Yeah, I do think they could have skipped that and had the same effect. I think of it. Maybe the vines, start to grab her. I mean, obviously, at some point she does break free of them. I think you could have skipped everything in
Yeah.
between and not lost anything on the movie, because that is uh it's intense. Like and almost too dark tonally for what happens in the rest of the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
in the later in the movie, exactly what you described happens to another character, and we don't see it, but we see the aftermath of it, and we get it.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
the point comes across. So it's
And also the
unfortunate.
callback of it doesn't get mentioned. You know what I mean? I guess in a sense, that can happen in instances of assault, but like, and I know obviously it's crazy to to talk about trees assaulting you, but like, as you'll see here in a few, when she's back at the cabin, it's no mention at all. She doesn't talk about what any of really what happened out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems to happen to her, and then it's never brought up again. So
Yeah.
it feels because of that, it feels exploitive, but
Exploitative. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exploitative. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but we digress. We'll move on. Eventually, she's able to break free and run back to the cabin, the demon cam behind her in close pursuit. And this is a truly terrifying shot to be out in the forest in the dead of night, in something that's just attacked you, running behind you, but you can't see it. Like they did, this was very effective.
And what one of my favorite parts about this is that the horror movie trope obviously is girl running from killer and trips over nothing is fully justified in this instance, because every branch and every vine out there is alive and trying to get her. So
Oh,
it's not
that's
hard to
true.
think like, just a root probably popped up and knocked her down. So it actually made sense for once that the woman falls while she's running away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she keeps tripping over
Yeah.
herself until she gets back to the cabin entrance. And then she's banging on the door to be let back in. And no one is coming. And which I don't understand because from the outside, it looks like a small cabin. But apparently, inside, like you said, it's what's the Doctor Who?
At the TARDIS,
The
yeah, bring her
TARDIS.
on.
Yeah, it's a TARDIS.
And honestly, like what I love, it's actually kind of a fun the way I put this world together in my head to make it make sense in horror movie logic. Like it's a great device. If they had established, what I would have loved is if her pounding on the door like, let me in, help, 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 and then just cut to the inside of like Scotty talking to his girlfriend, and you don't hear anything outside. You know what I mean? Like they don't hear uh, whatever is happening out there, because I feel like again, like the house as a living character could be stopping them from realizing what's going on outside. But I wish they had just done like quick 5-second cutaway to establish that.
Yeah, because as it is, it doesn't feel genuine that nobody would hear her.
Yeah, yeah,
She finally gets the keys from above the door as she's fumbling, just like Scotty did in the beginning of the movie with the door. Ash opens it right before the demon cam gets there. And really funny is we could hear like an audible groan from the demon cam, like, oh man, come on.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
thought that was really funny. So I have a question for you here. Did this scene seem reminiscent to you of another scene from a movie that came out like 3 years earlier in 1978?
Oh man.
Uh, very famous movie that had a sequel come out within the past couple days.
Oh yeah, yeah. Old the old shape floating around.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
from
Halloween.
Halloween when Laurie is trying to get back into the house when Michael Myers is chasing her,
Yeah,
and she's like, the keys.
yeah,
She can't find them. That sort of thing.
yeah.
My wife and I quote that all the time. Like I was saying, this was set up perfectly when Scott had trouble finding the right key earlier in the movie.
Mhm.
So back inside, Ash asks, "Who did this to you?" And Cheryl says the woods themselves did. They're live. And she wants to leave right now, but nobody believes her that the trees attacked her, which is what you're saying. Like,
Yeah, it feels like that at that point it's like, let's stop and talk about this. But they just kind of like, you're being and to your point, I guess if they had established earlier, like, hey, we were all smoking weed while we do this or doing drugs, like that would have also kind of helped kind of bring that logic in where they would just be like, nah, she's just, on a bad trip or something like that. But yeah, it just kind of all gets brushed aside pretty quickly.
yeah. She demands to be taken back to town, which Ash obliges. There's a great shot of the other three at the doorway, the light behind them as Ash and Cheryl walk to the car. I kind of like that shot. But one thing that we haven't found out yet here, we find out way later on in the movie, is that Ash and Cheryl are siblings.
Hmm.
But he doesn't act like that. Or maybe he does. Maybe that's how you would treat your sister. I don't know. I've never had a sister before. But if my I have a funny story about a quote unquote fake sister that I've talked about in the previous episode, so I won't bring it up here. But if I did have a sister and my sister's said that I had just been assaulted, I would think I would like react differently, like want to
Yeah,
protect her. I don't know.
yeah.
Do you have sisters or do you have anybody like in a sisterly manner that you like want to protect in this situation?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't have any sisters, but I definitely have close friends, male and female. Just if anybody came to if I'm out, we're all out in a cabin, and someone came in the way she came in, like that would halt the whole evening until we had a chance to speak to them and let them tell us what happened and hear it and believe it and act on it. And I thought it was weird, especially it threw me out of the movie for like a solid minute there where I was like, wait, there that's his sister. Like, yeah, I was like, man, he did not. I have a brother, and if he would have rolled in looking like shredded and bloody like she was after being out in the woods, I would be like, oh my god, like what happened? You need to tell me everything. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and even if her story isn't making sense, like about trees attacking her, something attacked her.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah,
So we
yeah,
need to address that and don't worry about the why, but worry about the what, and then let's
yep,
deal with that.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly, yeah.
but I don't know. Maybe it was just how the patriarchy.
Exactly, yep. It's
So
always there.
in true horror movie fashion, Ash's car won't start, and Cheryl says, "I know it's not going to start. It's not going to let us leave." And as soon as she says this, the car does start. Cheryl, honey, you're not helping. Like Ash gives her a knowing look, like okay, and then they pull off.
Yeah,
On the road, Ash drives in silence back to the bridge. But as he's getting closer, he gets out of his car and Cheryl follows behind him, even though he says, stay there. Again, loving the atmosphere here with the sound of like rubbing wood and metal and the fog as she walks up to the old bridge and she sees that it's finally collapsed.
yeah. The use of light and shadow, like throughout the movie, it just keeps getting more and more intense. To the point that later sometimes you can actually see lights strapped to trees, but in this scene, super it's just so intense the way that they have the headlights just kind of disappearing off into the fog as Ash walks away and he disappears into the blackness. And this is my favorite shots of the movie was the car when it parks is like level, and then Ash gets out of the car and he's tilted at this extreme angle as he's like, taking in, obviously he sees the bridge fallen, and she follows, and she's also at this weird like 45-degree angle. So I'm guessing the car was parked at an angle, they were straight, and they just tilt the camera. But like it's so unsettling on screen, that approach of him, like, at this askew angle walking into the blackness.
Yeah, that was a great shot. And it happened exactly how you described it. So scared, she runs back to the car, and Ash jumps out of nowhere and grabs her. Like, you already know she's going through a rough time. Let's maybe calm down on the jumping out of darkness.
Yeah.
She starts yelling. I told you it wouldn't let us leave. There's a quick cut back. Later, they're back in the cabin, and Ash is listening to the tapes again. And the professor says his wife has become host to a Kandarian demon. The only way to stop the possessed by the book is bodily dismemberment, which is foreshadowing. And he also talks about the dark shadow he has seen in the forest. If Ash is listening, he knows. I guess you're just hearing it for the first time. Maybe you're still not taking it seriously, but the professor tells you how to defeat these demons. And in fact, he has the opportunity to do so later on, and he just can't take it. But it feels like he could have mitigated the disaster here by just like taking those steps.
Yeah, I feel like that um again, obviously budget and time probably played into that, but I think that's something they could have expanded a little more, was just that whole thought process of like, if this is happening to her and this guy's saying the only way I can stop it is to, basically chop my sister into pieces or whatever, like that's pretty intense to deal with. So it was a nice touch to the script.
Yeah. And so there's a funny shot of Linda and Shelly, doing card tricks. Linda swears that she can tell what the card is that Shelly has because she has ESP. Then they hear Cheryl calling out all the cards for real, but she's looking out of the window, so there's no way she could be doing that. And also her voice is getting more and more like growly, or just like a low, intense growl. Until finally she turns around and we see that she's been turned into a demon. And she looks awesome. What'd you think? How did you think she
Oh,
looked?
I loved it. Yeah, just it was such a great makeup shot, and the way she's floating. I mean, um, and again, the lighting, the angles, like it's such a Raimi classic Raimi shot. You know what I mean? But it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, she looks grotesque. She has like red slashes on her face, like blue veins all over her neck and head, and her lips are blue. Her eyes are all white, and her forehead is bandaged from earlier. It just looks crazy. It looks great.
Yeah.
And suddenly she's floating in midair and saying the following, without her lips moving, by the way. She says, "Why have you disturbed our sleep, awakened us from our ancient slumber? You will die like the others before you. One by one, we will take you." And then she falls to the floor. Very effective shot. Like,
Yeah.
especially like you're talking about the low budget, like how they did this is great.
And my favorite part is what, I don't remember which girl said it, but like she hits the floor, and her first question is like, "Did you see her eyes?" And I would have like, "Did you see her floating in midair? Like that's what you noticed?" Was
Yeah,
her
bitch, are you serious? Her eyes? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then no one moves, no one knows what to do. And finally, like Ash approaches her, and we see her outstretched hand reaching for a pencil that had fallen on the floor. And she's just playing dead, quote unquote, playing dead. And suddenly she grabs the pencil and sits up and brings the pencil down right into Linda's ankle, like her bone or Achilles heel or tendon area, or Achilles tendon or like her heel area.
Yeah.
And she moves the pencil around back and forth in that wound, and
Such a great shot.
eventually it breaks it off in there. I kind of envy you, or maybe not. Like, is this the first time you've seen the shot? Because it's a very, very like famous shot that
Oh
might
yeah,
have
no,
been.
that's the first time I've seen this one. It's kind of a callback to is it Pet Cemetery, where the little kid slashes the dude's Achilles heel?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that?
Which one came first? Though I think this one,
Oh, this
Evil
was way
Dead, was in
first.
'81.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, very much for it. And it was this is all my this is to me this one was a lot grittier and gorier. I loved it. It was such a great shot.
yeah. So do you get squeamish when you see stuff like that? Are you like, "Ooh, that's
I,
messed up"?
I get squeamish, and I always tell people like this is where I think like good horror or effective horror, I should say, comes from. Is like if you described that shot to someone, they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds gross," because you, you've probably never had a pencil, rammed just behind your Achilles tendon. Whereas
Yeah.
if you did like a really detailed, gritty description of someone getting a long, slow paper cut on the webbing between their fingers, everybody knows what that would feel like, you know what I mean? And that like makes it more squeamish. So something like this, when I see it, is kind of like there's that initial shock of like, and then I just kind of watched him like, wow, this is
Yeah.
intense, you know what I mean? So it doesn't like make me turn away in the same way that like a very realistic injury or something I could actually imagine happening would,
Yeah. Yeah. This is my wife. She's gotten better, but when we first started going out or yeah, seeing each other, she was not good with horror movies. And this sort of shot would like wreck her. Like
Yeah.
she'd be fucked up in the head. So
Yeah.
it was a very effective shot. Ash attempts to stop her, but she slaps Linda across the
It's the
room.
the demon pimp slap is what I
Yeah,
wrote
it's
down. She does a back of her hand.
amazing. And then she pushes Ash into some furniture. She slowly advances on Ash with the bloody pencil, looking absolutely amazing. Scotty grabs an axe and beats her with the blunt end and hits her back into the cellar. All the while, she's saying, "Join us." So Scotty has to put the chains back on and kneel on the hatch so she can't open it back up. She then creepy laughs and eventually stops trying to open the hatch. This is intense. Like her laughing, like this demon laugh, is unsettling.
Yeah, and I love like the that whole thing being established of her being chained down there and how they keep coming back to that little rattling door and opens just enough that she can peek through or poke a finger out.
Yeah,
And the shot of Scotty when he's first kneeling on there, and you can actually kind of see like everything registering on his eyes as the door is just kind of like bucking underneath him, and like he's realizing how whatever it is, how strong it is, that it's like if those chains weren't there, he'd just be flipped off across the room, basically. Yeah.
yeah, they'd be dead. We then see this amazing shot from outside the cabin of the full moon, and with fog that's like seemingly filling it, like it was an empty container. It's a very weird shot. It's hard to explain, but it looks great. And then they it does come back later on in the movie as well.
Yeah, not
Uh,
just in the moon, but in the some other stuff at the end. I'll bring up when it
oh,
gets to
great.
use the
Yeah, I'd
specific
love you if
shot.
you would.
Yeah, yeah,
So then later, Ash has put Linda to sleep. I don't know how you can go to sleep, maybe because you're in
exact.
shock.
That is my exact note. I'm like, how can she? How can any of them like? How was the next shot not all of them sitting back to back in a very brightly lit living room? Like, what time is it? When is the sun coming up? What's happening?
Just
Like,
like hugging themselves, rocking back and
yeah,
forth,
just
you
like
know?
I can't imagine he chains that. He stands up, and then she's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna hit the sack here. I'll see you guys
I'm gonna
later."
have a quick lay down, you know?
Yeah,
And so Scott and Shelly are sitting in front of the fireplace, watching over the possessed Cheryl in the cellar. And so this is where I was confused. I didn't know if it was in somebody's bedroom, the cellar
yeah,
opening, or if it
yeah.
was out in the living room. Because now they're in the living room, or unless there's a fireplace in the bedroom as well, which I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
could. I couldn't place it all. The like I said, the geography was so wacky on that cabin. Yeah,
Yeah, which kind of helps to like keep you kind of discombobulated, you
yeah. I
know.
think it works. I mean, honestly, it does work story wise, whether they intended it or not. I think it
Yeah,
just adds to the whole thing. Yeah,
yeah. So then we see the point of view from Cheryl in the cellar, looking out at them, and she's making like these really possessed noises, grunting and groaning, and she's trying to loosen the chains. Very upsetting. Great sound design.
yeah. And that
Um,
hand that keeps reaching into the frame.
yeah.
It's nice. Yeah.
So they say that we have to wait until morning to leave, and Shelly wants her to stop making those noises. For God's sake, what happened to her eyes? She's like obsessed with these eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eh,
Once again, call back to that whole that thing earlier with the gift where they keep cutting up close to their eyes and everything. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So then Cheryl like laughs horribly. Like I hate her laughter.
Yeah.
uh, we then see Demon Cam again floating outside. It's a lot louder now, and we see it looking at Shelly from outside. And Shelly looks outside from her window. The Demon Cam ramps up, then attacks her. Scott and Ash hear her scream, but Ash looks at Scott like, "That's your girl."
Yeah.
So Scott like slowly goes to check on her. In her room, he sees she is missing and the window has been broken in. There's so much fog outside the window right now. It looks like an 80s rock video or something. It's great. I
Yeah.
love it. So Scott is holding the broken wooden piece from the window, and it looks like a cross as he looks around the room for Shelly. He then searches the bathroom, slowly pulls back the shower curtain, and nothing. Once again, no payoff,
Yeah.
As he turns around, suddenly a demon possessed hand grabs his face and scratches the absolute living shit out of it, like blood instantly pouring down his face. Then we shoot to outside the bedroom as Scotty comes bursting out of it, uh, sort of giving Shelly like a demon piggyback ride. The worst thing, as in the scariest thing about this, is that the sound design is the sound design of the demons. Like it's terrifying and disgusting to sounding. And I watched it on my Xbox because I have the 4K, and so I had my headphones on, and it made the experience that much more visceral
Oh
because it
yeah.
was like I was inside the room with them.
Yeah, it's a very very wet, squelchy movie. Like the longer it goes on, it just gets so like goopy in the sounds.
Okay,
It's
Michael,
great.
this is a family podcast. We don't describe things as wet and goopy here, okay?
Yeah.
So as Shelly is attacking Scott, biting him and such, it is now worked up Cheryl in the cellar who keeps pushing the cellar door up, which causes the chains to rattle, making noise. But the worst part here is that she isn't trying to break the chains. She's just trying to stir up drama. She wants to make what's happening worse.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in this movie. It's like they'll do like they'll have a one-on-one demon encounter, and then you'll think like that they're overcoming it, and then a second demon shows up, and you're like, "Fuck! We thought we took care of that one, so now it's back." And
Yeah,
you can't get a clear footing.
I think that's what I really started to love about this is like at first you start to think like, well, the demon's right there, they're right there. Why isn't the demon killing him? And then it starts to you really get that sense of like just a cat playing with a mouse before it decides to really take it out. There's no reason. There's no reason to rush. The demon knows it's got all the way till the sun comes up, at least.
Right.
So it's great the way that it just fucks with him through the whole movie, and it's like, I'm gonna tear you up. I'm not gonna kill you. You'll still be able to run, and I don't care because I'll get you. I don't have to get out of this basement yet because I know, well, something's gonna find you. It's great.
Yeah, like they even say like we're gonna get you. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so Shelly has now contorted herself to be in front of Scott, with like her legs around him, attacking him and attempting to bite him in the neck. Scott rears up and Uncle Phil's her ass into the roaring fireplace. As she burns, we hear Demon Shelly saying, "No, don't burn her." So Scott pulls back the burning Demon Shelly from the fire, and as he does, we see her horrible face, eyes all white, face all covered in thick blue veins, bloody patches of skin. She's all fucked up now. And she says in a demon voice, "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if I had remained on those hot coals, burning my pretty flesh. You have pretty skin. Give it to us." And then
Uh,
she grabs Scott's throat and starts choking him. I would have given up at this point. Like,
yeah,
what do you want me to do?
yeah, and
It
I
wants
love
my skin.
Yeah, and I like that it's like, um, it's so simultaneously like horrific and cartoonish at the same time. Of just, I think that's really what keeps this movie being engaging is how playful it is with these kind of tropes of like, it's not just this dark, heavy, kill, kill, kill. Like this, it's a demon. Demons are known to be tricksters, and it's clearly having fun. Like, and that makes it even scarier to me. Is just like, oh, it's enjoying this, like it's having fun.
We cut between this happening and Cheryl doing her best. I don't know this '80s reference that was stuck in my head. She's doing her best impression of Uncle Luke and raising the roof. She's trying to get this door open, and Cheryl looks absolutely terrifying here. The possession has fucked her face up. It's reminiscent of Reagan McNeil from The Exorcist. I'm not sure if you've seen The Exorcist,
Yes,
but
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but her eyes are like now all red, and it looks so good.
Yeah.
All right, so my question was for have you seen The Exorcist? You said you have. Are you religious? Do you believe in demons or exorcism or anything like that?
No, I mean, yeah, I was raised. Well, I should say I'm Catholic. I won't say I'm raised Catholic because we didn't really go to church growing up. But yeah, I'm not big on the whole organized religion thing, and I think I don't put too much faith, quote unquote, in any of it, good or evil. But I do feel like if you are religious, it makes sense that you should give as much validity to angels as you would to demons, as seeing them as influential in this world.
So if Max Booth, I, calls you tomorrow and says, Michael, I think I'm possessed by demons. I need you to come over and help with this exorcism. Are you calling like the
I,
psychiatric hospital?
I don't know, man. If he wanted the exorcism, I would do what he thinks needed to be done.
Oh, I guess we'd have to wait until at least November 16th.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and then
If he called me and said he was possessed, I'd be like, yeah, no shit. Like, I knew it. Yeah.
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 8 years, up until like high school. Now I'm an atheist, but
Mhm.
um, I feel like these types of movies, like possession movies or demon movies, they're always like the hardest for me to watch because I want to roll my eyes and be like, yeah, whatever, like bullshit. But
Yeah.
also it's like el cucuy, like fuck that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always find fascinating too about this is like how much these movies rely on the power of demons, um, and how weak God is in most of these movies. You would think, like, especially when you read the Bible, like, oh, he cast out demons, he did this, he did that, and maybe they're making a comment on how weak people's faith is, but you would think all powerful, all loving God, if someone's getting attacked by a demon, would just come flying in like Superman and be like, get the fuck out of here, leave my people
Yeah.
alone. But like, there's God is never present, and maybe that's also part of the message of these movies with everyone suffering on Earth. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like, yo, like God, I thought we were a gang. Like
Yeah, exactly.
we're
Like,
boys. Like,
I'm,
help me out of here. I'm
I'm
getting
saying
fucked
good
up
stuff
here.
about you every Sunday, and this is what you give me. Come on, I ate your flesh, man.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I didn't want you to do that. But I did like how this movie didn't bring religion into it. It's just
Yeah.
demons. That's all.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily tied to any uh, Abrahamic uh, God.
Yeah, it
It's kind
definitely
of
feels like a force that existed before man, almost. You know what I mean? Like, it
yeah.
feels like that. Yeah.
I dig it. So Shelley smacks Ash again and has now backed Scott up against the fire, screaming, "Join us!" over and over. Shelley then grabs a dagger that they found downstairs and attempts to stab Scott with it, but he deflects the attack and reaches behind his back to his belt, where he keeps a Bowie knife, and proceeds to cut into Shelley's hand that has the dagger in it. In an absolutely horrifying scene, we then see Shelley slowly bite off her own hand and throw it to
I
the
loved it.
ground as
Yeah.
everyone looks on in the horror. What did you think when you saw this?
Oh, it was so amazing. I was like, well, first I was like, why the hell does Scott have this giant Rambo knife strapped to his back this whole time?
Yeah,
It
how
just,
convenient. We haven't seen this at
yeah,
all.
and I feel like he pretty much would have been getting out of bed at that point since everyone else was sleeping. But yeah, I loved it. Like, I love, again, like the whole notion of the demons toying with these people, where he starts this job and the demon's like, oh, were you trying to do this? Just like, let me just chew this off for you. Like, now what? Like, I loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Great effects. Like the
Oh yeah.
practical effects in this, they have held up 40 years later.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
very impressive.
So Ash has a face like, what the fuck is happening? A face we'll become familiar with throughout the movie and the franchise.
I think this is also for me where Ash, you start to realize that Ash is the final girl in this movie. Is
Yeah,
like is really hitting all those tropes of like, you know, backing up against the wall and trembling in fear and all that. You know, it's a great to kind of see that flipped on its head.
yeah, and like we're starting to get um, closer shots of the chin,
Yeah,
like that. So we're loving it.
yeah,
So Scott then grabs the dagger, which Shelley's dismembered hand is still holding, and plunges it into her back. The screams that Shelley makes as she attempts to grab the dagger out of her with her bloodied stump of a hand they're just terrible. They're horrible.
yeah.
The dagger starts steaming, and Shelley slowly falls to the floor. You thought we were done, but we are in fact not done. Round two. Demon Shelley is now writhing in pain on the floor and starts leaking this white substance.
I I made a note here. I said rigor mortis equals jizzer mortis because really a lot of white fluid spraying around the room in this part.
All right, so I got the headline from when I post this
There you go,
when I
jizzer
post this
mortis.
on Instagram, and yeah, uh, from the mind of Michael Paul Gonzalez.
Yeah, I promise
Uh,
my books are a little more highbrow than jizzer mortis.
so in actuality, it's milk.
Mhm.
They used it so that the MPAA wouldn't give them an X rating, but it didn't work anyway, and they had to release it unrated.
Huh.
Um, but yeah, it looks unsettling.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't even think about the whole movie rating system back then. Yeah, I mean just that, and we're not even like hitting the climax of the movie. Was just so gory, so intense. Yeah, I loved it though.
Yeah. So slowly, she dies, and we're waiting for her to make another move. And Scott all too quickly starts to check on her, and it's like, Scott, chill out, let things settle.
Yeah,
But in true horror fashion, nope, he doesn't wait long enough. And she grabs him again, and here goes Cheryl's trifling ass in the background, starting shit again. As Shelley advances on Ash and Scott, Scott yells at Ash to hit her with the axe he's holding, but Ash can't bring himself to do it. So Scott grabs the axe from him and whacks Shelley with it. And this part is comical because it's like he hits a fake body that immediately goes down.
yeah,
And he proceeds to do his best Borden impression. The Lizzie Borden had an axe. She gave her mother 40 whacks. When she had done, she gave her father 41.
yeah.
Yeah, like we see close-up shots of her appendages being chopped off, a foot and a hand, until finally the screen is literally covered red with blood, and it's a
I loved
great
that part.
shot.
Yeah, yeah, so classic. It was great because it was like it just keeps bouncing between like, oh, this is so gory, and then like this has gone on so long, it's becoming funny, and then like, oh no, it's getting really gory again, and then the blood wash comes in. It's just like such a, it's like kind of like a rock concert moment there where you're just like throwing your hands up like yes, we're in it now.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, this is
guitar solo.
if you're watching this in the crowd, which I haven't had the luck to do yet. I would
Yeah,
love to, but if you're watching like in the theater, the whole crowd will be like, "Yeah,"
yeah. It's like the Eddie Van Halen guitar solo moment
Yeah.
here. Yeah,
So the whole time he's hacking her to pieces, she's screaming, "No, no, you love her," which
yeah.
is like horrible to think of, having to do this to a loved one.
Yeah,
And
and that keeps coming echoing back through and I'm glad they did that too, or it wasn't just like, oh no, you're a demon now, so I have to kill you. Like they definitely keep it grounded.
yeah, and it does echo back. Ash has to make a decision like that, and we'll get to that. But my question for you here is: do you think that you could have done that to a loved one
No,
in this situation?
and the one I'm trying to think if this is um I know it calls back later. I kind of wish they would have because there were scenes in the movie where they'd kind of snap between demon makeup and no makeup, and that would have been a good instance of like right at the moment of decision, um, to snap back to normal person, which they do in a little bit. But I don't think I could honestly, like unless it was just I don't know, like of mice and men where you're coming up from behind, you're just like, hey, look at the rabbits, I'll kill you. But
Wow, spoiler alert, Michael.
well, yeah, sorry for everyone who didn't read that in sixth grade.
Yeah.
I don't think I could, honestly. Like I would have I would have a hard enough time, if I guess I could kill someone who was trying to hurt one of my loved ones, but to to do what they had to do, that'd be hard.
Like, could you identify a loved one by their whisper? Right? Like,
Yeah.
which I don't think I could do it either, man.
No, I mean, especially that moment, like you're just about to take a swing, and then something like that. You loved her, like that's even if you know it's the thing talking, you're still about to kill the body of of the person you love. That's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we then see Shelly and her parts on the floor, like still wriggling, which is great. Love
yeah,
it. They did a similar thing in Return of the Living Dead. Ash asks Scott, "What are they going to do?" And Scott says they need to bury her. So they take her pieces wrapped in a bloodied white sheet outside to bury her. While outside, we get the demon cam again as Scott and Ash look inside at Linda. Ash starts to say, "We can wait till morning," but Scott interrupts him and says, "I'm getting out of here." Ash says, "We can't take Linda out of here with her leg like that. And besides, the bridge is out." And Scott says, "There might be a hiking trail or an old road." And Ash again says, "Linda can't walk." And Scott says, "We'll leave her here, dot, 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 and send help." Ash says, "You're crazy." But again, Scott interrupts him and says, "He's getting out of here. He doesn't care what happens to Linda. She's your girl. You take care of her." I think this is the realest moment here.
yeah. And I think also the moment where you're whatever happens to Scott, he deserves it at this point because he's abandoning his friends and and a sort of understandably, I mean, in a human sense, very understandably, like, look, you do what you want to do, but I can't stay here another second. But yeah, it was pretty intense. And I also noted that I kind of wondered if Ash and Scotty had buried a body before because they dug that grave really fast. Like, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Like, who are you calling if you got a dead body? Well, I'm calling
Yeah,
Scotty and Ash.
exactly. Yeah,
So, which is funny because this part where Scott leaves comes back later on and gets a little bit of his own medicine.
yeah,
Scott walks out of the cabin with his stuff and only briefly looks back over his shoulder as he walks away from the cabin. Back inside, Cheryl starts talking shit to Ashley. Soon, all of you will be like me, and then who will lock you up in a cellar? I feel so bad for Ash right now. He's alone in this house with all these demons.
yeah,
Um, there's a great shot again, like you're saying, of her in the cellar, but like trying to get out underneath the cellar door, and like her eyes are fucked up and her face is fucked up. Uh, Truly iconic shot. I have a poster of it that has that shot, and it's great.
oh, nice. Yeah,
So Ash nopes out of the room and he goes to check on Linda. As he looks at her ankle, we see the infection slowly start to spread up her leg. Then we see her face, and she's grinning from ear to ear, and her eyes are rolled into the back of her head, and she has a cut on her forehead. She sits up in bed and cackles, her arms outstretched, and Ash backs out of the room. What do you think of this effect that they used?
I loved it. I loved the whole like the ink spreading, the darkness spreading across her foot. I had a note that I put Tammy Faye demon because she was so like I loved it. Was just so great because it's not just the makeup but the variety, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, oh, we're all going to turn into these gruesome demons. She has this weird like possessed doll quality to her almost with that smile, um and almost like a different personality. So it's clear, they're starting to make it clear that it's not just that there's legion, to borrow the religious phrase. We are legion.
Yeah.
That they're all coming. So it's cool. Yeah.
So Ash backs out of the room. Now alone in the cabin, he goes outside to feel safe. As he's looking inside down the hallway, Scotty leaps up from nowhere and yells, "Help me!" So he's lost his jacket and he's hurt, and Ash drags him back into the cabin. As he's walking from left to right, we see Linda sitting cross legged on the floor, grinning maniacally and laughing. Such a great and effective shot here.
Yeah. And
As you're saying, I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, as you're saying, she looks like a devil doll or something.
Yeah, and there's so I guess the other thing I like too is how annoying the demons are, but in a good way, in the sense of the story, where they're just so persistent and just like they know they've got him. They can just play the whole time.
Yeah, and of course Scotty's come back. He left, and now he's back and wants to be protected. Ash sets the bloodied Scott on the couch below a mounted fish. I think it's like a bass, maybe, or something. Honestly, it's been maybe a couple. I saw this movie recently, within the last year or whatever, but I felt like something was going to happen with that fish.
Yeah,
But I think I'm remembering Evil Dead 2 because it's more animated and more like comedy horror scenes. So I think something does definitely happen in Evil Dead 2. So I was getting my movies mixed up here. So Scotty says it's not going to let them leave. And we see a broken bone protruding from his wrist.
it's so gory. It's
So
like a little
gory,
chicken bone, but it was so gross.
but
Yeah,
effective. And this is what
yeah,
we were talking about earlier. Is he says that the trees attacked him. So the same thing. Well, not the same thing. Well, you know what? Maybe the same thing
maybe.
happened.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't even know. But
yeah,
the thing is, we didn't see it. We didn't have to see it to
yeah,
know what happened.
yeah,
Or to be fair, maybe it's only effective because we saw the first shot. But that still doesn't mean that they had to go as far as they did. You know.
yeah.
So he says, I don't want to die. You're not going to leave me here, are you? Oh, word? Didn't you just leave Ash and
Yeah,
Linda?
yeah. I loved it.
So then, of course, Petty Mayonnaise herself, Cheryl, starts mocking him in her possessed voice. I don't want to die. You're not going to leave me here, are you? Are you, Ash? And she begins to cackle. Like, that's so fucked up, man. This guy is dying already. You done fucked him up, and you're still talking shit to him.
Yeah.
I hate and love these demons as well.
Yeah, and just that, like I kind of keep repeating is like the whole thing of like the demons right there, and Scott's half dead. Ash is sitting on the floor. If it at first I was like, well, why isn't it trying to kill Ash? But it's like I love that game is part of the whole thing. You know what I mean? Is that it's just going to sit there and taunt him, where it's like pro wrestling almost, where you're just like, oh, I can't wait till the bad guy gets the chair across the back of the head, and
Like, oh
yeah,
yeah, brother.
yeah, we need a Macho Man demon in
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So then Ash asks Scotty if there was any way besides the bridge, to which Scotty says there was a hiking trail, but the woods are alive and they know. So the two possessed demons start cackling again, and Ash warns Linda to shut up, but she doesn't listen to his sage advice. So he straight up like uses her face as a punching bag,
Which was hilarious.
which is
It feels
hilarious.
so weird to say that, but the scene is just so funny.
Right, but it does no good. She continues to cackle. So
Yeah,
the demon, Linda is no longer there, but the demon doesn't feel it or doesn't seem to feel it.
yeah.
Ash grabs the shotgun and says a prayer before preparing to shoot her. But right before he does, Linda returns and begs him to not let them take her away again. So he hugs her and says he won't let them take her away. But as soon as we start feeling good that she's back, that we then we hear Cheryl's voice from off screen asking for help as well. Slowly, Ash starts to realize something very fucked up is happening here. Cheryl goes, Ash, let me out of here. Let me out of here. Now unlock this chain and let me out. And Ash starts to unlock the doors. Slowly, he looks inside and calls for Cheryl. I want to know what you thought in this moment when this was happening, when you heard her voice.
Yeah. I mean, it was again. I think it was just one of those things where it wants you to let your guard down. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's fully intentional for the audience to go like, "No, don't do it, you idiot!" But again, put yourself in that situation. If I like it that there's people clinging to hope, and I think it's one of the things that can help keep driving horror movies forward is just the hope we're going to get out of this somehow. You know what I mean? And just oh, maybe she's all right. Like maybe whatever was in her has passed. And but it's so ominous, just the way the whole thing is set up with that door. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of hope, there's none to be found here because suddenly Cheryl's arm pops up out of the floor and starts choking him. And Cheryl says, I'm all right now. It's your sister Cheryl. This is the first we're hearing of this, that they're brother and sister. I feel like we're, maybe 60, 70% of the movie through, and this is where we're hearing it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think maybe there was like one throwaway line earlier, but yeah, it was. Yeah, which I wish they would have established, like you said, little more strongly early on, because I think that could have helped kind of crank up a lot of the horror elements that came after it.
Yeah. So then Ash escapes her grasp and says, "You bastards, why are you torturing me like this?" Then we hear possessed Linda back on her bullshit again, sitting cross legged on her floor. But now she's singing, "We're going to get you, we're going to get you." Ash grabs her by the legs and drags her out of the cabin into the forest. She's wriggling and writhing in agony, saying, "It's useless. In time, we'll get you." Which, like you were saying earlier, it's just a matter of time. Another shot of the full moon, but now it's red, and we see that shot of the fog billowing out in front of the moon, almost covering it completely. So back in the cabin, Ash gives Scott a drink of water and says, "Soon the sun will come up, and we can all get out of here." Well, everyone except Shelley.
Yeah, my note, I said that Ash is like waterboarding Scott pretty much. Like, he puts that cup up to his mouth and just keeps pouring and pouring and pouring, and like not even really noticing that nothing's happening on the other side there.
Right, more like wishful thinking than anything.
Yeah.
He then notices that Scott has died. Ash gets up to look outside to see if Linda is still out there, and as he turns back, Linda appears with the dagger and stabs him in the arm, then licks the blade clean of his blood before attacking him again. First of all, backing up a little bit, as you were saying earlier, this is that jump scare where we weren't expecting,
Yeah.
like we weren't expecting her to pop up as he was turning away, because we just saw that area was clear of demons,
Yeah.
so that was a great use of a jump scare there. Then she stabs him and she licks the blade clean, is amazing, and like makes you shiver to your soul.
Yeah, and I think it's, and to your point, again, going not just going back to like, could you hit your loved one with an axe if you thought they were possessed, but like even there, like what would you do if if your wife stabbed you and then stood in front of you and started licking the knife clean? Like that is some high level creep there.
Yeah. So they tussle until she backs him by the cellar, and then Cheryl grabs his leg and screams, "Join us!" Slowly, Ash is able to wrench the dagger around to Linda's back and pushes her down on it, and she vomits the white stuff and appears to die. Ash grabs her legs and drags her out of the room. It's a nice shot of us following the body being dragged until we come upon Cheryl looking like a crazy demon possessed in the cellar doorway or whatever. It's very effective. We then see that Ash has dragged her to the workroom we saw earlier and chained her down to the table. He then grabs the chainsaw. Squee! Like right away. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah!
yeah. I was like, oh, this is gonna be it, and sort of. We'll keep going.
So what?
Yeah.
So maybe you could describe what happens next.
He just yeah, he gets it revved up, and then he can't, obviously can't do it because she's back to her, you know, innocent looking self again.
Yeah,
Can't really chop her up. Yeah.
yeah, and then he sees the necklace that he gave her
Oh
earlier, and
yeah, yeah. I totally forgot
he
the
can't do it,
magnifying
and he
glass. Yep.
and he cries over her body.
Yeah.
Um, he then, well, a funny note here that I read was that they used a real chainsaw because of their budget, and I'm sure that they took the blade off, or at least I hope to God they took the blade off. But Ash has that real chainsaw up to the actress's like neck, and you could
Mm.
see her like neck pulsing like out of like nervousness.
Yeah. Yeah, I could imagine.
He then carries her body outside and starts to dig a grave. Oh, Ash, you sentimental idiot! Because he knows, like the professor said, because they killed his sister,
Yeah.
Cheryl. They chopped her up. Was it Cheryl? No, I'm sorry. Who was it that they chopped up? They chopped up
Ooh,
Shelley.
Shelley, yeah.
They
Yep.
chopped up Shelley and they buried her, and she hasn't come back. She hasn't come back. So there's a token, right?
Yep.
But he can't do it. So he drags her outside, and buries her, or I should say, he then carries her body outside and starts to dig a grave. As he does, we see that Linda has opened her eyes again, which Ash seems to sense, but when he looks at her, she closes her eyes again, and
Yeah,
there's
that
that
was
back and forth, like you were saying.
such a great callback to that gift scene. Yeah, it's one of those things where like early on in the film, I'm like, why are they doing these close-ups? And then they do it again here, and it's like, oh, that's so great. I loved it. Yeah,
Yeah, and this is maybe the fourth or fifth time that I've seen this movie, and you caught it right away, but I didn't catch it. So I was
yeah,
like, "Wow, I just realized that."
yeah.
Which is something I love about this podcast is like, because while I'm taking notes, like I'll watch the movie extensively, like one or two times, on like director's commentary and all that sort of stuff. So I really get to know these movies, and it's great, like picking up stuff that you didn't see. You know, maybe you've seen the movie a bunch of times, but always
Hmm.
something new. So while this is happening, Cheryl has finally broken free of the cellar, and Linda seems to kind of sense this. Ash places Linda in the grave and buries her. Again, Ash's like grave digging abilities
Super fast by himself too.
on
Yeah,
full display.
yeah,
So Ash notices the necklace he gave her lying on the ground and goes to pick it up. And as he does, Linda grabs his hand and leg, scratching his leg to shit. Just looks nasty.
yeah. That was intense. Like the way
Yeah.
she's there's flesh shredding. Yeah.
And Ash, ooh, flesh shredding. That statement is not. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
So Ash falls in pain, grabs a wooden plank, and proceeds to beat the shit out of Linda.
with with a giant like 4x4. He is like Babe Ruth with that thing, man.
Yeah, Ash is fucking built. He's strong as fuck.
Yeah.
He's got like that mom strength when like their kid is
Yeah.
like
Yep.
injured, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and but the whole time she's just cackling. And then Ash falls down exhausted. She says, "Come to me," and leaps at him. And Ash grabs the shovel and lops off her head midair, her head landing far away, but her body landing on Ash, blood spurting from the neck. And I don't know if you caught this, but her body was writhing on him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very Freudian. This whole this whole scene of
Yeah, like it's
yeah.
just trying to dry hump him.
Yeah.
And Raimi said that this was his trying to connect. Cheryl was sexually assaulted early in the movie, and now like Ash was kind of sexually assaulted at the end of that movie, but
Yeah.
not to the same degree in any sense. You know.
Yeah.
So he walks back into the cabin and notices that Cheryl has escaped. He grabs the shotgun and searches the cabin for her. As he's checking one room, he gets close to the broken window and Cheryl lunges from outside and grabs the shotgun. But Ash fends her off. And to me, I'm thinking, guys, have we not learned to stay away from the fucking windows yet?
Yeah. Windows and slowly opening doors. Like they never learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Ash shoots her in the shoulder. She falls, but immediately gets back up again. He tries to close the cabin door on her. I mean, why? Since all the windows are broken. I mean,
That's my first thought. He like slams the door, pulls the dresser in front or whatever that thing is in front of the door as he's standing next to this 5 foot tall shattered window frame. I was like, "You're
yeah.
not doing anything, dude." Yeah,
Her hand gets in the doorway, but he quickly smashes it with the butt of the gun, which is a nice shot because you see all this like juice coming out of it.
yeah, a lot of finger trauma in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ash remembers a box of shotgun shells in the cellar and goes to retrieve them. To me, I'd say that the cellar was the safest place to be right now because we know that all the demons are outside of it and you can close that. That's the only place you can go to that closes without any windows.
yeah, that's I didn't even think of it that way. But it also would be the scariest place. It's kind of where everything started too. Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's kind of like a Night of the Living Dead.
yeah,
It's your
yeah, yeah. Just hold up and wait till dawn. Yeah,
yeah. So great. There's a great shot here of the pipes dripping blood, and then they burst and blood gushes all over him. Then one thing I was gonna say is while filming this scene or these scenes, Bruce Campbell like took off his shirt and put it to dry by the fire, and when he went to go pick it up to put it back on again, it had dried so stiffly that parts of it broke
Oh wow.
because the fake blood,
Yeah.
it's a combination of carob syrup, non-dairy creamer, and red food coloring.
It's like a paste at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the part I've been waiting, like in terms of the moon, the callbacks here of like, throughout the film, you see that weird inky blackness, keep covering the moon as the demon comes and goes. And like here in the basement, kind of tying everything up with like the house as this living thing creature as well. Almost like it's been constipated with these demons, right? Like you said, like the pipes are like dripping and then they just burst and there's this diarrhea of blood essentially that goes over Ash. But prior, even the light bulb in the ceiling starts to like fill up with blood the same way that the moon did outside. So it just feels like it's like, getting closer and closer, and this is it. Yeah.
You are a genius. I never put those two together. That's great. God damn, this is a smart movie.
It's a deep movie, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also like demons and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but blood is pouring out of everywhere, electrical sockets and stone walls, stuff like that. So the projector starts on its own, and the bulb from the projector gets blood dripped on it, which is then projected onto Ashley. I felt like I had to call him Ashley at least a couple times.
Yeah. And I was hoping that there would have been something coming out of the projector rather than just light. That with the combination of the music that starts up, I was just like, it would have been a great touch to have no film in the projector, but something projecting over Ash as all this is happening, I think.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
So now all his demon friends are taunting him, and I think it's in his head. Can't be for sure, for certain, but saying we're going to get you, and he tells them to shut up as he loads, these shells. The projector explodes due to the blood dripping over it, and so does the light bulb that was filled with blood. Ash now has to kind of wade back through the bloody floor up the stairs, which again, no backs, so very dangerous. Uh, and I don't know if you noticed, but in that puddle of blood that he steps into, there was a band aid floating in it.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
And it was kind of like a funny little thing that they put in there, like
Yeah.
this band aid in a small little band aid in this big puddle of blood,
Nice.
As he's getting upstairs, we see that all the clocks in the house are chiming and the hands are going crazy. And we get this great Dutch angle and upside down camera angle here of Ash losing his shit.
That shot was so great. Like I rewound it a few times. That was such a nice camera work there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So paranoid as fuck. He's like just losing it. Then the demon cam tries to get into the room, but he shuts the door. Ash is going crazy as he looks into a mirror and reaches out and is able to put his hand through it as if it were water. Another
Yeah.
great shot. What'd you think of
Yeah.
that?
It was amazing. It's funny. I have a part in my book that's sort of the same thing where this woman like falls down in the sea and pushes through the floor almost through into another version of Southern California briefly. And that's sort of how I pictured it happening in my head as I was writing it. I was like, oh, that was so nice. And again, like just what they did with their budget, like that. Just the resourcefulness and the thought process that must have going into setting that up and making it happen, because it cannot have been an easy shot to set up on a low budget movie.
Here's something to ruminate on. Raimi was turned 20 years old making this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and I think too that kind of goes to the whole like one of the things I love about low budget indie young artists is that they don't know that they're not supposed to be able to do this stuff, like it's one of those things of like, hey, you can't do that. Someone will say like, hey, you can't do that, and someone like, yeah, did somebody tell them that? Because they're doing it, you know what I mean? It's great. Yeah,
They already wrapped on filming. It's
yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So we finally start to see that chin of his up close and personal, and then Ash reaches into his pocket and feels the necklace he gave to Linda, which brings him back from the brink. But just as he's calming down, Linda reaches in through the door and grabs him, saying, "Join us." I don't know if there's some sort of like union or something, but they really
Yeah.
want him to join them. So Ashley escapes the grasp and shoots her in the face, which does pretty much nothing. And Ash pushes aside table. Oh, This is where Ash pushes aside that side table in front of the door, but again, Ash, the window's open right next to you. So this is where
Yep.
that happens. And then we see a great shot of Scott sitting up, demonized now, and he attacks Ash. And this man cannot catch a break. And I'm like, I forgot about Scotty already. Like, I didn't think he
Yeah.
was going to come back.
Yep.
God damn. So Demon Scott looks awesome though. He looks like a pumpkin or something. He's orange. It looks great.
Yeah.
In the tussle, the Necronomicon ends up on the floor by the fire. Scott now has Ash up in the air, choking him. Ash then puts his thumbs through Scott's eyeballs, blood oozing out as he
Uh,
does.
Great
Amazing
effect.
shot.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't quite figure out. I don't know if that was a prosthetic head or what, but it was great. I don't know how they did
Oh, that was the actor Scott who played Scott. Like he hasn't been seen again.
it. Yeah,
They
he's just
just
like, I don't. I'm giving my eyes up for this
yeah.
movie. No problem.
So Scott drops Ash, who then grabs the branch that was stuck inside Scott and removes it, and all the blood pours out like oil out of an oil pan.
Yeah,
It's kind
it's
of nasty.
yeah, another great effect. Yep.
And meanwhile, Cheryl breaks down the door and knocks Ash down. Ash notices the Book of the Dead by the fire and crawls for it, but Scott grabs him by the leg, and Ash kicks him off and reaches for the book. But then Cheryl has grabbed a poker from the fireplace, pus oozing out of her mouth. And as Scott is dragging Ash back towards him, Ash grabs the necklace pendant that he gave Linda. And I don't know if you noticed this, but the necklace is arranged in a skull pattern on the floor.
Oh no, I didn't catch that. Oh, you know what? Yeah, because the chain. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
I see that now. Yeah,
And he uses it to bring the book closer to him. While this
and I
is happening,
thought
sorry,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say I thought like the first couple times he does that, like he's trying to lasso the book with this really flimsy necklace. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever. But what I ultimately love about it is like he is so fucked in that situation. It's like literally the only thing he can do, and it's like it seems so useless and dumb, but he never stops trying. And it was yeah, it was great. It was nice tension there.
Yeah, I mean, he's got one demon on one leg. He's got another demon beating him. It's like,
Yeah,
fuck, man. But he's fighting. He's continually fighting because
yeah,
he is our final girl, right?
that's right.
So while this is happening, Cheryl is hitting him with a poker, and Scott is biting him in the leg. Finally, he's able to drag the book closer to himself and grabs it and tosses it into the fire. So I know I brought this up earlier, but the magnifying glass necklace was originally intended to be a plot point by focusing the sunlight to burn the Book of the Dead, but it was decided after shooting began that it wasn't going to work. So its actual use in the film was a desperate attempt to keep it relevant since so much film time had been spent on it already. So that's what
Yeah.
you're saying. Like this flimsy chain isn't going to do anything, but they needed it to do
Yeah, and
something.
it's so funny, like the way he tosses it, and it's just so limp, and it's like that it would just you would have to have the luckiest throw in the world to even do what he does with it, and it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in the story. So yeah,
Yeah. So he's tossed the book into the fire. Cheryl then freezes, then drops the poker, screaming kind of slightly internally as she does. And while she's frozen, she seems to twitch. Then slowly her face and head start to decompose. Absolutely amazing shot. Claymation. The same is
which is
happening to Scott.
I was gonna say claymation makes things like 1,000 times creepier. It's just so unsettling. Yeah,
Absolutely, because you know
yeah,
it's not human skin, but it's resembles it almost, but it's like, God, it's look creepy as
yeah.
fuck.
It's just so like jiggly, and obviously they're it's stop motion. It
Yeah.
it just gives this quality to it that's just amps up the unsettling nature of it all. Yeah.
So it's full claymation decomposing party. Even the Necronomicon gets in on it. And then something that resembles oatmeal pours out of Scott. It's
That's what I put. Scotty's leaking grits was my
yeah,
note
the
there.
grits. There you go. Um, so yeah, true country boy. You say grits, I say oatmeal.
Yeah.
Then the decomposed Cheryl looks at Ash, and we don't know what's going to happen, but you never expect this shit. A huge demon hand explodes out of
Oh,
Cheryl, and
yeah.
Scott, both of them, Cheryl and Scott, and seems to shoot them from the inside. It's something's happening. to her insides, and Cheryl falls, her skull exploding on the floor. Scott is decomposed to a green puddle, and still we hear "Join us, join us, join us" one last time. What did you think of what was happening here?
It was so great. Yeah, I loved. I wasn't expecting it, which was great. That her body, which was a vessel, almost just becomes this last little doorway for whatever this thing is to try to break through, and the scale of it. Um, I just love that because the horror had been so small and so focused before, so you'd always get pencil to the ankle, chewing a hand off, so it's a very tight, close kind of stuff happening, and then it just goes into monster land at the end. It was so great. Yeah,
Very effective because they waited until the last minutes to do
yeah,
that, you know?
yep,
So it's finally over. Ash stands up, surveys the mess around him. As the sun has now come up on the cabin, the clocks are working again, triumphant strings as he looks at the pendants. Ash walks out of the cabin to face a new day, a new life. Question for you here. How does he explain this to anybody? The cops, his parents,
yeah,
others'
yeah.
families.
I do like I do like unanswered issues in horror films that would have dire consequences of like you are the final person, you're alone in the woods walking away from a cabin full of dismembered people, and like when the cops go there, they're not going to be like demon parts, it's going to be people parts, you know what I mean? And it's like how um it's like that feeling of you got through this but it's not done,
Right,
and just the fact that his leg got shredded, the only way out is a hiking path and he doesn't know where it is or where it goes or how far he is from civilization, but that he hasn't given up yet, like he's going to keep trying to walk.
yeah. So our final girl walks out of the cabin into the woods. He has survived. But of course, it doesn't end there. Demon Cam is back, baby. The Demon Cam starts doing its thing and works its way into the back of the cabin, pushing the door open, through the cabin, through the front door, knocking that open to an unsuspecting Ash. We see his back, and as the Demon Cam approaches him, he turns around and yells at the top of his lungs, and Demon Cam enters his body. The end?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Credits
like.
roll.
Yeah, it blew me away. Like that shot again. Like this is pre CGI, pre drones, pre like yeah. I mean, clearly not a dolly track or anything, but just the path that camera takes through the house, upstairs, through doors, all the way to him. It's insane. It's such a great ending shot.
So they did the same thing that they did with those kind of tracking shots earlier outside the window, where they strapped it to the tripod and then that to a 4x4.
Yeah.
But with this one, they strapped all that rig to a motorcycle, and Bruce Campbell drove that motorcycle through the house.
Wow, that's great. Yeah,
And
that's
he said
crazy.
that he's broke a couple ribs doing that shot because he fell over in one of the shots and did
Oh,
that.
I could imagine. Yeah, it's yeah, that's the all. I'm just thinking back to his book now, where they call it the Ramo cam, right? Where is that the one that they
Yeah.
put on the edge of the board? Yeah, it all makes sense now, thinking of it that way. But yeah,
So the credits roll and the ragtime song "The Charleston" plays on the Victrola as the credits continue to roll. Eventually, the song stops slowly as if it were playing on a record player, so it's kind of garbled. Then we just hear the sound of whooshing air, and then the credits end.
yeah.
And I wanted to say that the eerie howling wind audio that's heard in the background of much of the film and here in the credits wasn't stock sound effects. Raimi had actually recorded this audio himself while staying in a hotel during the filming. One evening, Raimi awoke to hear the wind blowing through the mountains, creating this haunting sound. He quickly got his sound equipment and recorded several minutes of it. Sam Raimi said that the audio was so effectively creepy that he'd recognized it used in several other films since the Evil Dead's release. So others have used his audio.
Oh wow, that's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the movie. What did you think?
Yeah, it was not what I expected. I honestly thought it was going to be schlockier, I guess, than it was. I was thinking, pure '80s slasher. The effects will be gory, but not that good. and the plot. I mean, the plot for what it was, it was very well grounded in its own reality. I thought, where it's not um, past that first moment of like, hey, why didn't we just leave the cabin when the first creepy thing happens? There's not a lot of that stupid horror movie logic of people constantly like blundering into dark rooms and stuff. It's more, it is kind of like survival horror, at that point. So I was overall just very impressed with, especially just thinking back on the indie nature, the tiny crew, the smaller budget. What they did with what they had was just amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, this movie, the more I've seen it, the more I realize how good of a movie it is. And like you could tell, low budget, but they put their blood, sweat, literal blood, sweat, and tears into every part of
Yeah,
it. At one point, they ran out of money, and Bruce Campbell put up I think it was either his house or his family's property. He put it up for a lien or loan for it to give that money to Raimi to keep making the movie. And Sam appreciated it so much that he made him a producer on the
yeah,
movie. So yeah, they went all in on this, and you could tell like this is what it looks like when you love what you're doing. You know?
yeah. And I had that note where I said basically like, it really felt like at some point in this process, Sam Raimi is like, this might be the only movie I ever get to make. You know what I mean? And just like was throwing everything. Like you could see like he was throwing everything he had into it. Like it just uh, it had to look as good as it could under those circumstances. And there were shots. There was one shot like I noticed in the bathroom early on in the film that looked like they must have done a pickup shot at a studio because they had that bathtub with like a yellow backsplash on it in the cabin,
Uh huh.
and there's like a quick cutaway shot where it's clearly like a bathtub with yellow tarps, like you could see the individual plastic sheets, I guess, that were representing the wall. It was a super fast cut, but I was like, whoa, that was, and you could see like certain shots that were spliced in that weren't as edited as the other ones. It looked like almost outtake shots that they just had to wedge in there, but just that they made it work. It was like I said, it just felt like punk rock to me. It's like we got these instruments, we sort of know what they do, you know what I mean, and we're gonna give everything we have in here, crank it up. Yeah,
Yeah, you could tell the passion was there. You know?
yeah.
So I loved it. So okay, great. So what we do here is we rate the movie out of 5 upside down crosses. So what would you rate this movie, just in general, not as far as a horror movie or a demon movie, just in general? And it could change from day to day. Like sometimes I'll give a movie 4 stars, and the next time it's 4.5 or whatever. But
Yeah,
in general, what do you think you would rate this movie?
I would give it a 4, honestly. Like it wasn't perfect. But I never try to judge any piece of art against anything else. I really kind of look at like what was this thing trying to do, and did it do it? And I really think it did. And like I said, if there were knocks I'd have to put against it, is just like tiny little story things, that they could have expanded on to justify certain things, or you know, um, tighten the story up a little more and make it a little more grounded. But I mean, it was great. It was super solid for me throughout. Yeah,
Great. I love that that you like the movie.
yeah,
All right, Michael. So what I'll do now is I will absolve you of your horror movie sin, and in order to be fully absolved, I will say 3 suggestions of horror movies that you should watch. You can watch them or not, but if you don't, you'll probably burn in the fiery pits of hell. That's your choice, not mine. So I think we're talking here, and I said the first movie that I would suggest to you would be Evil Dead 2,
yeah,
right? Okay,
definitely.
I think that's going to be great. I think we're really going to like it. And then another Raimi movie that you're really going to like is Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah,
And then I know you're saying that you have a kind of gap in your horror movie history for like 80s horror movies and all that. So I think Demons from 1986, I believe. I think you'd really like that one. Is Italian horror, but it's really good. It's set in
yeah.
America.
I feel like I hear a lot about giallo, Italian horror films being kind of extra uh, intense. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
sounds
love
interesting.
Giallo.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I had a ton of fun talking The Evil Dead with you. If you could do me a favor and let my audience know where they could follow you, your projects coming up, everything like that.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Monkey Wright, monkey like the animal, and then WRIGHT, like playwright, Monkey Wright. That's probably the easiest way to find me. I mostly talk about weird stuff and pro wrestling and movies and stuff on there, but come join, have fun. I've got my novel, Beneath the Salton Sea, is coming out in November. If you're a fan of horror that's featuring women as the central characters, but the horror itself is not driven by misogyny, there's no sexual violence or anything like that, but it definitely is, gory. So it's up there if you like horror films or horror books. And I'll also have a short story coming out in another collection from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing called Lost Contact, which is sort of set. I've been doing a lot of horror stories that are kind of in a fictionalized version of Cheyenne, Wyoming, where I grew up. So it's kind of set there. Again, dealing with kids being alone at night and the creepy things that can happen. But those are the big ones. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show. Once again, I really appreciate it. I had a ton of fun. Hopefully you did as well, and you can come back and we could talk another movie.
Yeah, this has been a ton of fun. It's great to I love discovering new art that that everybody else in the world seems to have already enjoyed. But it's nice that I feel like it can be part of the conversation there.
Exactly. And I would definitely recommend picking up Michael's book. It was a lot of fun. I'm about a quarter or a third of a way into it, and I'm having a blast. If you want to follow me on Twitter, the podcast is at MHC Pod, like My Horror Confessional Pod, MHC Pod. My Instagram is My Horror Confessional. My email is myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com. The music was by Taylor Fox. You can follow her on Instagram at the Taylor Fox. Also, she has a new record that she's working on. Hopefully, it'll be out soon with a band called Great Hag. That's great music, and you should look for that. You can follow, she has an Instagram as well called Great Hag. And then the artwork was done by my friend, Captain_Mikey_art. You can follow him on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you later.